Just go to bed, guys. Gosh. Why are you still up? It's 9:30.
Hello everyone, this is Grey Ghost 81 with episode 17 of the RFGen PlayCast for August 2015. Before we get into the show, we have some exciting news for our loyal listeners. This September, we will be moving our hosting services from Podomatic to Podbean. This move will allow us to host all of our episodes in one place and maintain full download capabilities from Podbean's site and our RSS feed affiliates, which at this time are iTunes and Stitcher. We have already uploaded all of our past episodes to Podbean and have created a working homepage at rfgenplaycast.podbean.com, so please go ahead and check it out. If you subscribe to us on Podomatic, iTunes, or Stitcher, please note that this episode will be our last episode released on Podomatic. This means you will need to resubscribe once we change our RSS feed. This change will occur toward the middle of September, and we will be sure to notify you on the RF Generation forums and the homepage. Thank you for your support. We know that this move will only enhance your listening experience. Now let's get on to the games. For the retro discussion, the community's voice was heard and we played Little Nemo the Dream Master for the NES after a poll was taken to choose a title. For the podcast discussion, Floyd and Rich will be joined by returning special guest russlyman. On the modern side, Stephen and I will discuss the subversive military shooter Spec Ops: The Line for the PS3, Xbox 360, and PC. As always, our discussions are full of spoilers, especially for Spec Ops: The Line. If you haven't played the games and don't want them spoiled, please play the games first before you listen. Also, please subscribe to us on YouTube, like us on Facebook, and follow us on Twitter, where our handle is @RFG PlayCast. You can also listen to the show on Podbean and iTunes. Most importantly, don't forget to log on to rfgeneration.com to join our playthroughs and discuss the awesome games we play together. Thank you as always for listening, and now, on with the playcast.
So Floyd, welcome back to the show. We were a little interrupted last week. We had Steven on the call. Of course.
Oh, that's really okay. He's a great guy, so I don't mind him having around.
That's right. He did not join us this month, unfortunately. He said he was going to take a little bit of break. I think his intention was to probably join us, as he does sometimes. But it's great to have you back on this side, Floyd, and just enjoy playing some retro games with you and catching up just like old times.
Oh yeah. I think I upgraded to a plasma screen and got a Retron 5, and it's kind of just been sitting collecting dust for a while. So I'm really happy to be finally putting it to good use.
Very nice, very nice. Well, we've also got a special guest on our show this month, russlyman. Many of you know him on the site as russlyman, as we like to call him sometimes. Welcome to the show, Russ.
Hey, thanks for having me.
All right.
It's good to be here.
Awesome, awesome. And as many of you know, Floyd and I are actually going to Retro World Expo up in Connecticut, and of course we'll be on Russ's turf, so we'll get to visit with Russ while we're up there. Russ, can you tell us a little bit about Retro World Expo and kind of what's going on and all the little inside secrets that you know about it.
Yeah, I'll see what I can leak out. But pretty much the job that I work at, Retro Games Plus, is a brick and mortar retro video game store. We have 3 locations. Just opened our last one in Newington, Connecticut, about maybe just about a year ago now, I'd say. Everything's going well. And our owner, Chris, had talked to John over at RetroWare TV. Runs like YouTube channels and has awesome gaming stuff. And they wanted to put together a retro gaming expo in Connecticut because nothing like that happens. We have like the Comic-Con type expos, but nothing just strictly, retro video games. So yeah, it's a great idea. We got a bunch of people together doing different aspects and stuff, and it's coming down to the wire. It's in October 3rd in Wallingford, Connecticut. It's about 20 minutes from where I am. And I know we're all going to pretty much have a big RF Generation get-together beforehand.
Yeah, it's going to be really awesome. I know, and I'm probably speaking for Floyd as well, but I'm getting really excited about October and coming up and just meeting everyone for the first time. It's going to be such a nice trip.
Absolutely, it'll be nice and cool out too, so we don't have to worry about summer heat.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's cool that it's up in Connecticut, too. Like you said, the guys from RetroWare, that's kind of their home base, so it's kind of nice that they're doing something, and it'd be cool to be at the actual first, we can all say, oh, we went to the very first convention, that these guys had, after it blows up years down the road from now, right?
Absolutely. I mean, that's the biggest thing with a selling point with us trying to get vendors for the show and guests. Mm-hmm. They're like, how was the attendance prior year? Well, this is our first year, so we don't know how it's going to turn out. Yeah. But yeah, we're hoping the best. Ticket sales are going well. I'm actually going to have a table at the event, so I'll have a booth selling stuff.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that.
So yeah, that's kind of a lot of pressure on me because I'm working at the game store and I also have another job at Costco, and I'm trying to find the time in between to make a lot of stuff so I have pretty good products to sell at Retro World.
All right, cool. Any hints about what'll be at your table?
I'm hoping to do a lot of custom NES controllers.
Right.
I'm going to be doing kind of unique pixel bead art. Mm-hmm. I'm hoping to make, if I have time, a flux capacitor from Back to the Future.
Oh, wow. Awesome. You might have to set aside a few for us.
And a couple other things I'm kind of toying with. And if I just have the time to get it together, I actually just got my banners in, some 2x6 banners I can hang up. One of them actually has my face pixelated, and it says, "Hey guys, Russ Lyman here."
That's awesome.
That's great.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
Is there any chance that you can sort of tell our listeners any of the special guests that are going to be at the big con?
Well, definitely confirm we're going to have the Game Chasers come down.
Right.
That's going to be huge.
Yeah, and I know he's not as big, but Woods from the channel Beat 'em Ups, he's from Australia, and he's actually going down to meet Billy and Jay and drive up with them, so he'll be swinging through the expo as well.
Poor guy.
That's really cool.
So, and then we got a couple bands as well that are going to come down and perform there, so that's super exciting.
Yeah.
That's going to be later kind of in the day.
Yeah, and if anyone hasn't listened to the last Collector Cast episode, they do a whole segment. I think the whole show is about Retro World Expo, and they talk about the bands. And Bill, who's one of their members and one of our members at RF Generation, is helping out with the show, and they do a full cast just about Retro World Expo. So if you're interested in the bands, please Google Retro World Expo, go to the website, and check out all the guests and everything, and everyone that's coming. I think that actually it's a great lineup of guests. A lot of the guys from RetroWare will be there. So
oh yeah, I mean there's the gaming historian Norm, which is great. I mean it's great that all those people are pretty much local, so we'll be able to see them and hang out with them.
Right. Yep, and I've already spoken to you about holding one of your little Metroid things over to the side for me. So,
oh, yeah, absolutely.
Metroid tubes. Yeah, I wanted to get one of those several months ago. Well, go ahead and, Russ, if you want to, you can go ahead. Russ has his own YouTube channel, so I'm going to let him go ahead and plug that. And I believe you had your own Etsy site, correct?
Yeah, I had posted a few of the Metroid capsules on the Etsy site, and I had sold on there one of the flux capacitor replicas as well. But being at the expo is probably going to really push everything forward. The name of my company is pretty much called Power Up Customs. I got a little mushroom logo, and it has like glasses on, kind of like how I wear glasses. So this is where you're like, okay, that's kind of like Russ. And then I do the YouTube channel. It's just Russ Lyman. I keep it simple with my name. And that's how kind of I open up every video. I go, hey guys, Russ Lyman here, and then go into my video. So that's kind of my catchphrase, I guess.
Yeah, it's awesome. I really love the game hunting videos that you guys do. Those are a lot of fun to watch. I really enjoy those. And then your round table talk as well is cool.
Yeah, because working at the video game store, someone had the idea of like, hey, let's do a podcast, like, because we work at a game store, and I was like, okay, like, let's get it together. So I've been trying to release one every single Friday, a podcast episode, and then Mondays do a random video on my YouTube channel, whether it's game hunting, I do DIY stuff on making, I did like a shifter knob out of a mushroom tin for your car.
Yep, or Donkey Kong barrel, I remember that.
Yep, I took a beer keg, made it a Donkey Kong barrel. So there's a whole lot to take in on my site. Like if you check it out, YouTube/Russ Lyman, and there's videos every week. And yeah, hopefully it stays interesting. I got a little GoPro camera, so I'm going to be taking that around Retro World. I'll probably put out a good 40-minute video on that.
Yeah, I just got one
really
as well.
Cool.
So I may be doing a little filming while I'm up as well. So that'll be awesome.
And then
you better
also
make sure that. Go ahead.
I was going to say also, as a special treat, at Retro World, we're going to be displaying my Mario car.
Oh yeah, that's right.
I was about to say you better bring the car. That's incredible. That made my day.
Yeah, so that's going to be somewhere. I don't know where we're going to park it. I've been talking to Bill because I was like, well, I have to bring all the stuff I'm going to sell and park my car inside, and have time to go back to Bill's house to hang out with everyone.
Oh, we'll make it work, man.
Yeah, I mean, if we don't sleep for a day, then hey, it'll be worth it.
Absolutely. All right. Well,
and speaking of DIYs and custom stuff, you have something pretty special lined up for this playthrough.
Yeah, I mean, I get a lot of custom vinyl overlays for Nintendo controllers, and I had a slew of different games, and I was going through them, and I happened to find one for this game here that we're playing this month of Little Nemo, and I was like, hey, it'd be perfect if I can customize a controller and kind of do it as a giveaway for all the people that participated.
Cool. So what's the contest? You guys were talking about this in secret. I wasn't included on this. I'm feeling a little left out. So what's the contest? Have we figured that out yet? Or
I think at first we were going to do kind of like whoever beat the game and kind of put it into a pool of that.
Okay.
But I think since we only had so few people playing it, it probably wouldn't be fair because only so many people beat it. I think it was only like 2 or 3 people. I figured just anyone that competed, I'll just throw your name into a randomizer. We'll spin it and see who comes up.
Yeah, that's the most fair way to do things.
Yeah. We actually had 6 participants this month, including the 3 of us. And actually we had, believe it or not, we had 4 people beat the game. So we had 4 out of 6. That's
pretty good.
That's good
pretty
for
good
Nemo. That's really good for Nemo. And we'll talk about, of course, we're going to talk about why in this podcast. So, stay tuned. But before we get too far along, I'm going to let Floyd introduce the game. Now, this was August's retro playthrough, Little Nemo on the Nintendo Entertainment System. Take it away, Floyd.
All right. So, as some of you may remember, I was a little bit indecisive as to whether I wanted to play Little Nemo or Star Tropics, so we kind of put it to a vote to the RF Gen community, and Little Nemo came on top. I guess people love their Capcom platformers, and I mean that's totally understood. They're fantastic games.
Yeah.
Anyway, so Little Nemo, aka Pajama Hero Nemo, which I don't know why we didn't call this in the West. I mean, that's an awesome name. Anyway, it was released by Capcom in 1990, and it's based off of a Japanese animated film from Tokyo movie Shinsha that's called Little Nemo Adventures in Slumberland.
Yep.
Which is based off of a comic strip by Windsor Winsor McKay,
Right.
and that comic strip is called just Little Nemo in Slumberland.
Right.
So as sort of the name implies, all of these levels take place within Nemo's dreams. And the goal is to save the King of Slumberland from the Nightmare King. And in order to do this, Nemo's got to collect a set number of keys to unlock the door to the next level. But it's not super straightforward. I mean, you have to utilize some animals to help you out, and you feed them candy. And once you feed them enough candy, they fall asleep. And then this is where the game gets weird.
It's a strange game.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, according to the research that I've done, Nemo, quote, rides these animals, but when I played, I thought he was getting inside these animals' skin. And I think Rich said that, like, he wears the animals as pajamas or something.
No, I think that's what someone on the thread said.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I put that in my notes.
Sorry for getting that wrong.
No. I put that in my notes that someone had mentioned that, that these are like just pajamas that he's putting on, and I'm like, it's... I don't know. Maybe.
Well, I don't know if they're like straight up pajamas, because they're like... They're alive before you feed them candy and put them to sleep.
Sure.
I mean, technically, he only gets on top of the ape and the little lizard. All the other ones, he takes on the full form of the animal.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, he gets on the hermit crab as well, and the mouse.
Oh, that's right. I forgot about those guys in the later levels. Yeah.
Yeah, and the flounder. Did any of you use the flounder in the game? The fish in the water level?
I don't think I did.
No.
Yeah.
No.
I barely remember seeing it, and I think it was one of those things that, like, you see it and you're like, oh, that's an enemy. I just need to stay away from that. So, you just don't really realize it. But there's this sort of like fish. They call it a flounder, and it has like these boxing gloves. But as I was compiling this list of the different costumes, just so that I didn't forget any, I noticed it on there, and so I had to actually look up a video and kind of watch it and see someone use that flounder. So. Yeah, it was one of those you just kind of miss, and I think one that wasn't very necessary for the game to progress. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Just kind of tacked on.
Yeah. So before we get too far, I just want to go ahead and list the participants. I mentioned that there were 6 and that 4 of us actually finished. Let's see, Floyd, of course, Akara Niku played the game. Jerry Greenwood, Russ, of course, who's with us. Shlibby, who is actually one of our newest members. From the United Kingdom, and we're really happy to have him playing along. So if you're listening, thanks for playing with us, and we hope to see you in upcoming months as well. He's been, of course, everyone knows that I'm the editor of the site, and I do a lot of the thank yous for each month for people who submit to our database at RF Generation, and he's been really knocking it out of the park the last few months with the submission, so we really appreciate you doing that on that end, and just go ahead and give you a shout out while we're here as well. And of course, I played the game. So,
and don't forget to thank Shlibby in British English.
Oh, okay.
All right.
I don't know how to do that, but all right.
I don't know. You might have to look up some Monty Python stuff.
Maybe so. So as Floyd mentioned, the story kind of starts out, he mentioned the story, you rescue King Morpheus in this story from the Nightmare King. That's sort of the ultimate goal, but you really don't figure that out until after level 7. The story kind of starts out with you're visited by this messenger, and she lets you know that the princess wants you to play with her, right? That she wants you to be her playmate, and you're kind of like, a girl? I don't want to play with a girl.
Because we all know girls have cooties.
Yeah, exactly. Until this messenger gives you candy, which is kind of creepy. I mean,
yeah,
And then she gives you candy. She's like, oh, here's some candy. I'm going to leave now. Now you have to go through these like 7 stages of hellacious platforming to get to the princess to speak with her in Slumberland, which is kind of odd.
Was it really candy?
It could have been. I'm not sure. When someone gives me candy, I'm usually getting in a van, and I'm just wondering why. I'm just wondering why we just didn't get in her van and she just drive us to the princess instead of having to do all this laborious platforming in order to continue the story. So
right.
But as Floyd mentioned, the game is it's a platforming game, and sort of the purpose is to find these keys as you're going, and these keys are kind of spread throughout the levels, and it's these sort of open levels, right, Russ?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of exploration for each level, and you have to use multiple of the animals to reach certain keys, because maybe you can't jump as high and need to get the frog suit to reach the key. Mm-hmm. I'd say the only downside with it is you don't know how many keys you need for each level until you get to the door.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's kind of this unknown number, and it varies per level. I mean, some levels have 5. I think some have 6, some have 7.
I liked one. I got to the end, and like all 6 keys were just right at the end. You're just going down a hill. It's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There you go.
I think that's Cloud Ruins. I think that's the 6th level, Cloud Ruins. You don't have to collect any keys along the way, because it's sort of like this platforming level that kind of is sort of upwards and downwards scrolling. Has these 2 parts that are kind of tough portions of the game, which, you know, if you played Little Nemo before, you know that this game is no stranger to tough, and it's something I think we knew before we started the playthrough, right, Floyd?
oh yeah. I mean, but I think it's so beloved by gamers that, you know, I think they overlook the difficulty.
Sure,
because it's a very fun game.
Yeah, it is. But it's you know, it's a lot different from a lot of the games that we're used to. And I know, like you said before, a part of the reason I think a lot of people pick this game is probably because it's not one of the more well-known games on the Nintendo Entertainment System. I would say people who know the Nintendo know the game, or have at least heard of the game, but there's probably not a lot of people who've actually played the game. Would you say that's kind of a fair assessment, guys?
No, I think that's pretty accurate.
Yeah.
I would say they're like, oh, it's on their shelf. They're like, yeah, Capcom, the cover art looks great. It's like, yeah, that's a fun game. It's like, but did you really play it?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Right, like it's sort of got that like brand recognition thing going on.
Exactly, and I think we got that, and I think we got that from some of the participants in our playthrough, and some of them had actually played it before, but I think it was a little frustrating popping in this game because, as we know, Capcom is known for their platformers, you know, as well as, you know, their fighters like Street Fighter 2. But, you know, they're known for having these great platformers. I mean, you know, Capcom, you know, developed Mega Man, you know, probably the most well-known game by Capcom, and, you know, several other platformers like the Disney platformers that are on the Nintendo are like DuckTales, Darkwing Duck,
Mickey's Mousecapades,
Chippendale's Rescue Rangers, Little Mermaid. I mean, list goes on and on. They developed all of those games, and all of them were really good games. You know, great platformers, a lot of fun. But Nemo's a little different. I mean, Nemo is this sort of tough as nails game with you know, really rigorous and tough gameplay. I think, Floyd, you mentioned before that the repops on these enemies are, you know, because you're going back and forth, right? As Russ mentioned, the levels are wide open.
I did mention that. Like I basically said that you have to really commit to every move you make, because if you want to backtrack or if you want to move to the left to maybe reposition for a jump and you happen to scroll the screen even a little bit to the left, you can cause enemies to respawn.
Right. And you're right. I mean, I think that's a great way to describe it. You have to be very precise in your movement. You have to make decisions like on the fly and quick. You have to know how the enemies move, how the enemies react, but at the same time, you can't hesitate, because if you hesitate, you're gonna die. I mean, there's no doubt about it. The game is not without its limitations. I mean, jumping in this game is not fluid. It's difficult. You don't jump very high. When you jump to clear an enemy, you barely clear the enemy, right? if you in fact do make it.
Yeah, no, I often found myself almost just like mistiming the jumps just by a little bit, so that I didn't really sort of just clear over them. I kind of went head on into them.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Almost just take the hit on purpose. It's like, let me just get through here. I know there's a health bar up front. Or
yeah, exactly. I mean, I wasn't trying to damage boost, but
right.
That's kind of what happened unintentionally a lot of the time.
Right. And with this game too, I mean, like you said, you've got candy, and you can throw candy at enemies, but the candy doesn't damage enemies. I mean, no matter how many times you hit them, it doesn't damage them. It only stuns them. And I think I brought this up in the thread, but a lot of times using candy and stunning an enemy is the worst thing you can do, because you're actually you're kind of breaking up that flow of the game, and it kind of throws your timing off in a way, or at least I felt that way. I don't know how you guys felt.
No, that's fair, because like they kind of basically just freeze where they are, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they kind of like are going back and forth, kind of like a little judder.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
But yeah, definitely, like if you're got a good flow of running and hopping over, and you happen to stun them, then you're just going to get hit by them. Then another enemy's going to come hit you again, and you're going to be dead soon.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I think like the whole thing is getting into a good rhythm.
Right.
And I mean, probably just like the Mega Man games is like you got to get into a good rhythm. Like you kind of just get into the groove of all the platforming.
At the same time, you have to really use your resources in this game, and you don't do a lot of, well, I don't feel like you do a lot of solo sort of platforming in this game. You're always at some point using a companion, especially after you get through the first level. These companions become necessary, or these taking on these animals. No matter, I don't know, Floyd. I mean, we've heard pajamas and different sorts of things, but it seems like you kind of take on the persona of these animals.
Exactly.
You have to exploit these animals and use them at the right times to play the game. I mean, it is sort of, in an essence, it is a platformer, but it does have elements of being a puzzle game as well, because you have to use the right combination of animals at the right time in the right spots, because if you don't, you're going to be doing some backtracking.
That's right.
Which is not fun in this game. Because some of the levels, I think someone mentioned, some of the levels do have checkpoints, and some of them don't. And one of the things that was sort of tough for me with the checkpoints is if I did have to backtrack, if I got to the door and I was like, oh man, I still need one more key. If I had to backtrack and I died, sometimes that would start me at the beginning of the level, because there's certain spots where the backtracking sort of cuts off. It's not like, like with, let's say, like Super Mario World on the Super Nintendo, you cut the tape, and then every time you die, you're going to start at that spot. And that's not the way it is on this game.
So there's sort of like predetermined respawn points.
Absolutely. But kind of getting back to the animals in this game, they all have different attributes. Some of them can attack, some of them can't. Some of them are just for manipulating the environment, like the lizard for one. He can jump, but he can stick to walls and climb walls and things like that. But he has no attack ability, like the the gorilla or the lizard, or several of the other animals that you can use. So I find that somewhat aggravating at times, but on the other hand, it's nice to have some variation to the game, and knowing this, like the gorilla, for instance, you typically have a 3-space life bar, but when you get the gorilla, it goes up to 5, right? So he's a little bit tougher. You can take a few more hits.
I think that's one of the things that made me find this game a little tougher initially, because I kind of expected every companion animal to have some sort of like offensive move. But no, some of them are just for like traversal.
Yeah,
I think that's why I'd say probably my favorite animal would be the bee.
Okay.
Because you could fly with them, and he shoots his stinger, so that works good. You can hit enemies that are low and high, and you can get the high places.
Yeah, I like the bee, but even with the bee, he's got his limitations. I mean, you can shoot enemies with the stinger, but often you have to hit them at least 2 to 3 times.
Yeah.
Which is kind of hard to hover and shoot at the same time. Plus, you can only hover for so long, you get tired.
Yeah, that's definitely a downfall. That was a tough call on the Cloud Ruin stage where you had to use him and you had to go up while the level is scrolling up, and you had to stop on little clouds to kind of reset your timer or whatever it is so you could fly longer.
Absolutely, and you have those vultures dropping the eggs on you, and yeah, that was one of the tougher parts of the game, I thought. Yeah. But yeah, how about you, Floyd? Any favorite animal for you?
I don't know. I think I really liked the frog because at least to me it felt like he moved very fluidly.
Mm-hmm. A little slow.
He was kind of slow. He was pretty decent in the water. But because it is a platforming game, like he had very good jumping ability.
Mm-hmm.
And you could jump on enemies too, so that helped out a lot.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and he can kind of like belly flop on enemies, which was good.
Right. Gives you that Super Mario factor, right? You can just land on top of things and take it out.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, which was nice. I like that one too. I like the hermit crab a lot. I mean, it wasn't a very useful animal, except for some parts where you had to go and get the key or crawl under a boat, or you know, that was the only sort of means for that animal to be in the game. But I still thought it was cool, you know, just really neat, like aesthetically, and kind of fun to use. I really like that the ability to sort of dig in the sand like that. That was fun. And speaking of digging in the sand, I mean, kind of a shame some of these characters weren't used a lot. I know the mole was used one time on the first board. I thought that was a little bit of a shame.
Yeah.
The gorilla was only used once, right?
I think so, yeah.
All right. The hermit crab, one board. I mentioned the flounder. There's only one of those in the entire game. But, you know, you had a few that were the frog, the bee, the lizard, and the mouse came in a few times, though you didn't get him till late in the game. So, but we had one of our members, Schlibby, who I spoke of earlier. He had a quote. He said, "I find many of the animals are a hindrance, especially the ones that keep sticking to the walls when you don't want them to."
Oh yeah, definitely.
That was a great observation. I can't imagine which one or which 2 animals he's speaking of, right?
So
And
like,
even
I wonder if it's like, is it because those animals are like just very sticky to the walls, or just like maybe imprecise controls, or what? I'm curious.
I probably it's a bit with the imprecise controls or something to that factor, because I know you're using the mouse. The hit detection with his hammer is terrible.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So probably it carries over to you jumping like, oh, you didn't really want to stick on that wall?
Yeah, I just had to spam that hammer a lot of times. I know that there was one board, and I'm not sure, I think it was Topsy-Turvy, where the turtles are spitting out the shells near the upper kind of left corner of that board, and I just had to just spam that hammer so I could hit those shells as they were flying overhead, because there was no way to jump them, because his jump ability was so terrible. So, but anyway, we'll talk a little bit about looks like we've spoken about the platforming and the characters and the gameplay pretty well. Again, just your kind of basic platformer, some jumping every once in a while, and a little bit of a lone platforming when you get to like the later levels, which is kind of nice. You don't have to worry about keys and things like that so much, and you don't have to depend a whole lot on your animal companions for that part of the game. So, but let's see. We spoke about the areas a little bit. We talked about how they were free ranging. There were 2 scrolling areas in the game, which were some of the tougher levels, I thought. How did you guys fare on in the House of Toys, for instance?
I think that's where a lot of people get to and then give up and put the game back on the shelf.
Yeah, I can see that. I have to agree with that.
Yeah.
It's just a lot of memorizing patterns of when you should jump and when you should not, like go near the planes and run forward, then jump back, and just trial and error.
Yeah, definitely. For those of you who maybe are listening to this but haven't played the game, the third level, House of Toys, is a is actually a moving train that you're on top of, and as it's moving, it's going under spiked ceilings, and blocks are coming by, and at the same time you're sort of getting dive bombed by these like kamikaze airplanes, and then also these little sort of parachute things are dropping bombs on you overhead as well. So it's very chaotic. It has a very high risk reward system. If you want to try to get your life up, you can, but you're really risking a lot by doing that, right?
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
Yeah. And so that was one of the sort of the moving boards, and then you also had Cloud Ruins, which we've spoken about a few times. Being that was stage 6. The first part of that, you have to get the bee suit, and you have to fly up on the clouds. And as we mentioned before, the bee can only go so far before it runs out of power, and you lose control of it. So you have to land on these clouds and have all these enemies around you. And then the second part of that level involves actually falling down onto clouds as the screen scrolls downward. So
I'd say going upwards, it actually helped out hitting some of the enemies because it would boost you upward.
Uh-huh.
So then this way you could get to the platform before you ran out of flight power.
Yeah. What did you have more difficulty with? Was it the one going up, or was it the one coming down?
Yeah, definitely going up. Going down, it seemed like on going down you can stay off the screen for a bit without getting killed and kind of drop off and hit the platform. Yeah,
we kind of push you down, and you could manipulate yourself when you were falling too. So that was nice. I mean, that was a nice little addition to the game. If some games, if you fall off a platform and you don't jump as you fall off a platform, you can't move. But with Little Nemo, you can actually manipulate and sway, which way you're going to fall. So I thought that was kind of a nice little addition and something they added to the game, which made areas like that a little bit easier, right?
Definitely. Oh yeah.
Yeah, and sometimes it could help you out too when you were in the bee costume and you're kind of floating downwards. You could kind of manipulate and maybe land, so you wouldn't fall into a pit, which was nice. Let's see. We talked about the checkpoints already. Enemies. What do we think about the enemies, guys? I mean, was it too difficult? Just right?
My absolutely, I would say, hatest enemy in the entire game.
I think we can all probably agree on what enemy that's going to be.
Was the ones that fall from the sky that look like Jack Skeleton, kind of like his head.
The seedlings, right?
And they follow you everywhere, and I'm like, leave me alone.
Yeah, you have to really learn their... what they do is they kind of float over you, and once they get to a certain level, they'll get a bead on you, and then they'll just fall straight down. But it takes them a while to do that. So that's one of those enemies you really have to learn how to adapt to, which is tough, especially when you're on the smaller platforms in the game. There's not a lot of room to move, and your hitboxes is sort of clunky and big in this game. So it makes it very tough.
Yeah, I think all the enemies had some sort of pattern that like you really had to learn in order to sort of keep yourself out of harm's way.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with that wholeheartedly. Some of the more annoying enemies for me were the sort of the flying squirrels. I know those were on like the train level. I could really never get those guys down pat. I think I finally made it through that train level. Just got lucky that they were flying, because they would drop down, and depending on like where you were at, they would kind of swoop at you. But if you were too high, it might fly at your head, and you'd have to duck, and that would just kind of cross me up, when I was playing with my controls.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, let's talk a little bit about the difficulty of the game. We mentioned that. This is one of the harder games out there for the Nintendo, and I think it kind of got into some people that it was so difficult. I just want to know kind of what you guys thought about the difficulty. Is the game like unbearably hard? Is it too hard, or you feel like the difficulty is just right?
I won't say that it's too hard. I think it really is just a matter of learning how to play the game, just like elegantly and like masterfully. So I guess in that case, the difficulty is sort of like just appropriate for a good challenge, and to like really make you adapt and become good at it.
Yeah.
I think probably a lot of people go into it knowing it's a Capcom game, and they're like, all right, I'm going to play this like DuckTales or Mega Man and kind of blast through it. And you really need to take your time, and, the game wants you to explore and find the keys and kind of plan out where you're going to go. So that's why I think people give up so fast, and they kind of get to the train level, and they're like, all right, I had enough, forget it.
Yeah.
That was me, actually.
It's frustrating. I mean, it is a frustrating game, no doubt. I mean, and as Floyd mentioned, and something that I mentioned on the forums, when people are getting a little frustrated with the game, and this is something I really enjoy about the playthroughs. One of my favorite things is that to see someone who's like entirely frustrated and hating a game, and then like by mid or the end of the month, they've kind of changed their tune. They're sort of like, oh wait, you know what? This wasn't as bad as I thought it was. I've kind of learned the game now, and I think this game has a sort of high level of learning, a high learning curve. I mean, especially if you're so used to playing these sort of Capcom platformers, that it does have a high learning curve, and how everything works, how the enemies behave, how the animal companions work, how you jump or lack of jump, right?
Yeah, that's right. No, like you really do have to learn how to play this game.
Yeah, you have to master all these little things to in turn master the entire game. So, but one of the cool things about the game, as someone pointed out, I didn't have this problem. I played on my Retron. I played this game on my Retron, so I could use save states, so I could play it. Start at the beginning of levels each night. But there's actually a code in this game. Does anyone remember what that was?
Huh. I actually didn't know that.
Yeah, Russ?
I had to keep going back to the post. It was something like left, right, select BA or something like that.
Right. And it will actually, if you die, it'll start you at the beginning, or actually it lets you select stages, doesn't it? And that's what the code does. So if you cut the system off, the game has unlimited continues, which is nice. The game is so brutal. If they didn't make unlimited continues, I think a lot of people would have put the game down a long time ago. I probably would have. I probably would have one of those people. But at least the developers are kind enough to do that, and they did put a code into the game where you can do a stage select. So if you've made it to like stage 3 or 4, you can put that code in and go ahead and start where you left off, which is nice.
It opens up on the title screen. It says Dream Mode, and then the only downside is that you have to hit select, and it just makes a beep. So you have to count how many beeps, like what stage you're at. Okay, stick 6 and count the beeps. Okay, that's stage 6 and hit start.
Right. Yeah. Well, there was a lot of complaining about the difficulty of the game, which I think a lot of people, really learned to appreciate the game as the month went along, and I was really happy to see that, and that's one of the cooler things, seeing people struggle with games that I was struggling with when I was younger, when I was playing these games for the first time. It's kind of fun because you're kind of like, yeah, I remember. I mean, it's one of the things, even as a young kid, I remember about the game was how hard it was. I mean, it's so hard that you have that memory. But, I remember just plugging through it and, keeping on until, my friend and I, we got it right. And that's just what we did back then. And it's good to see people reach, have that accomplishment and really appreciate that. So that's really cool.
That sort of that tenacity and, also just like supporting each other.
Exactly. That's a good point. Helping each other out on the forums. I mean, that's what it's all about. And that's why we do it, right? I mean, that's the best thing about playing the playthrough with all these guys. It's a lot of fun talking about the games and talking about what we like, but also in, kind of giving each other hints and things like that.
Yeah, I know. It's always nice when somebody's sharing like tips and tricks and it's not competitive at all. Like everybody's buddies on the site.
Yeah. I was gonna say it's similar to like growing up when you went to the playground and talked to your friends like, hey, I'm playing this game, Little Nemo. Like, oh, I made it past the train thing. You got to do this. And you're like, oh, thanks.
Yeah.
That's right. And, and unfortunately, we're, good or bad, we're in this world of technology where, not a lot of people can couch co-op anymore. I've been lucky. Like recently, I've got a buddy that comes over every Thursday now, and we just play games, and it's awesome. I mean, it reminds me of being a kid, and just popping in all these new games and titles, and of course, we didn't have this many games and titles when I was a kid. Maybe had like 3 games growing up. So things have changed, but it's just nice just to sit around with someone and have that sense of community. And I think for better or worse, it's not the same, but at least we have that sort of community where we can kind of support each other and have a semblance of what it was to kind of grow up back then. And that's what I like about the playthroughs a lot.
No, I think that's perfect. I mean, that really is sort of what we do and why we do it in a nutshell.
Yep. Well, moving on from the difficulty and things that people didn't like about the game, let's talk about something that it seemed that everyone seemed to think the game did very well, and that was the music.
Yeah.
We'll talk a little bit about sort of the history behind the music. The composer, her name is Junko Tamiya. She was a Capcom composer. She had several aliases: Swimmer, Tamichan, Gondaman, and Gon. Any of you care to guess why she had aliases or used aliases?
Maybe so Capcom wouldn't get mad at her working on other projects?
Absolutely. That's exactly right. Actually, Capcom did not put the composers in the credits of most of their games, and so they would have to use these sort of fake names so that other companies wouldn't try to steal their music composers. So I thought that was very interesting. I'm sure
that's really cool. Like I'm learning that for the first time, and like that is so cool.
Yeah, and it's the reason for a lot of games that were made over in Japan. A lot of games they're still trying to, you'll hear a lot of times, oh, we think so and so composed this, we're not sure, or they're trying now. People are trying to track down and figure out who composed the music for all these different scores in these video games because they wouldn't let them do that. And I don't know. There's probably some union against this now. If I had to guess. It sounds pretty cool to get to make up your own alias, but at the same time, it's kind of like, wow, you can't go out and look for other work. Kind of stinks, Or,
no, yeah, you can't you can't build a portfolio.
And she was a very famous composer. She did some of these games may sound familiar. She did Tiger Road, the arcade game, Bionic Commando for the Nintendo, Gunsmoke for the Nintendo, one of my favorite games on the system. The Strider arcade game, the Final Fight arcade game, the Sweet Home CD. Now, I'm not sure, the site I looked at, I'm not sure she did the music for the Famicom game. It just said CD, so I'm assuming maybe she did some of the arrangements for the music for some CD that was published for the game. I'm not sure. And among others. So I'd like to hear you guys' take on the music for Little Nemo. What you think?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely gets you pumped up as soon as you start the first level. It's got, a good beat to it, and you're like, okay, I could definitely go with this.
Yeah.
Catchy, you be humming it after you finish playing it, shut it off, you're like, yep.
Yeah, no, that's that's exactly what I was gonna say. Like it's like the perfect sort of, chiptune soundtrack.
Yeah. It's well, of course, Capcom, they're not known for being slouches when it comes to music, right? I mean,
not at all.
So they usually have great music in their games. One of the things I was sort of doing the research today for the podcast, and I don't know if you guys saw what I posted up on the thread, but the music, as I was listening to it, I tend not to listen to music a lot when I'm playing the games. I mean, some tunes are really catchy and memorable from my childhood, Mega Man 2, the music for that being one of those games. But usually when I'm playing, I'm so focused on playing, I'm not really listening to the music. So it's nice to have things like YouTube to be able to go back and sort of listen to the music for all the stages. And one of the things I kind of noticed was this sort of sound that I sort of remember, and you guys might have remembered from like going to the circus or, at other times in your life, this sort of calliope music. Do you guys know what I'm talking about?
I think so. I think I have a pretty good idea.
Yeah, it's this sort of like organ, and they were originally made with like steam. So this sort of like steam whistle kind of sound, and someone sits at it and usually plays a piano, and it sounds sort of like, what you would typically hear at like a circus or a carnival or something like that. And as I was playing this game, especially the first several levels, up and through almost through Nightmare World, it has this sort of calliope sound to it. And I guess, you associate things like calliope with circuses and, carnivals and things like that, which are all sort of childhood things, right? These things you kind of just enjoy, as a kid, going to the fair and things like that. And so I think that, probably with this game, kind of being based around a kid, it sort of fits really well with the theme. That was just kind of my opinion on it.
I was going to say that I think that was probably intentional.
Sure.
Because, I think it's supposed to be sort of like kiddie, circusy themed. Even just look at the design of the messenger.
Sure.
Right? It's kind of like a clown.
Absolutely. So I thought the music fit really well with the game. Was it my favorite music of any game? Probably not. I thought it was above average, but it wasn't. I don't know. I didn't think it was anything like super impressive. So the beats and Mega Man 2 or games of that nature. But still. Really well done, and it was a great effort, and something really cool about the game. So how do you think this game sort of holds up? We've talked about it being a Capcom game and having these sort of expectations, but how do you guys think it holds up as far as other platformers of the era?
It definitely is not like the worst platformer I ever played that came out around that time.
Well, what do you give that distinction or title to?
Maybe, does Dash Galaxy count?
I don't know if that counts as a game, period. The game's pretty awful. I remember watching a video of Billy and Jay struggling through that. Wow, what a bunch of nonsense.
But, it's definitely held high because it's made by Capcom, and
sure,
everyone's going to think Mega Man, perfected platformer. That's how it's going to be. And you go in with that, thinking it, and you're like, wait, nope, it doesn't play like that. I have to play this game differently. And once you get used to it, it's fine.
Sure. It does take a lot of getting used to, though.
Yeah, I think I'm going to have to agree with Russ, because it really depends on what sort of expectations you're bringing.
Sure.
When you start the game.
If you're used to playing Rescue Rangers, and it's kind of fast paced, running around, and you can kill a lot of the enemies. This you want to avoid the enemies as much as possible.
Yeah, it's more of a stealth game in essence. You're not taking out a lot of enemies. You're just sort of avoiding them.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's why I say it's really rhythmical.
Yeah. One of our members, Akari Niku, I'm sorry, I keep pronouncing his name wrong. He said about the game, and I thought this was really interesting and really telling, and something I really liked. And he says, Little Nemo really gives you the feeling of being a kid lost in a strange land. You're small, weak, alone. Everything is bigger and stronger than you. I think that's really well put.
Yeah, that sums up well.
Yeah, I really like that quote, and he's right. Everything is bigger and stronger than you, and it just goes along with what we were talking about. Just this sense of, you're a kid. You're not able to take these things out. You're not able to, be violent, or and you have to work your way up to that, right? You have to wait until the Nightmare World before you get the weapon, the Morning Star, right? Which is just sort of a magic wand of sorts to take out enemies. So we've talked a little bit about some of the stages. What did you guys think about Nightmare World? That's sort of kind of a different take on the game, right?
Yeah, it definitely turns darker and cranks up the difficulty.
Mm-hmm. Music changes too. No more of that happy calliope music that we were hearing in the beginning. The music is more dark. It's more sinister. There's a lot more kind of solo platforming. Still some use of the animals, but not as much as before. I didn't think. You don't have to search out keys. You just have to really platform and make it through the level, right?
Yeah, I like that aspect. It's just like, all right, you just got to focus on hitting these jumps right.
Mm-hmm. And this is also the only time that you see bosses in the game, which I thought was an interesting choice to put them at the end of the game like this. You have 3 bosses. The first one is the King Penguin. The second one is the Fire Stingray, and the third, of course, is the Nightmare King's ultimate goal is to beat him. How did you guys feel about these bosses? Any that you liked in particular, disliked, or did you like the gameplay with the boss fights? Because it kind of totally changed the game.
Yeah, I mean, it was cool that you finally got like a weapon to defend yourself with.
Yeah.
And I guess it was an interesting concept to make it only shoots in an arc, so you really have to plan how you're attacking the enemy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it fires diagonally, right?
Right, instead of like shooting like Mega Man's Mega Buster like straight on and you could just jump and fire away. This you kind of have to angle yourself a little bit further away to hit the boss.
Yeah, you could swing it too, as well.
Yeah, for those small enemies. But I know for the bigger bosses, I just charged up and shot at them. Yeah.
A lot of times it was basically the game had a good sense of letting you charge the weapon and then doing more damage. I don't know how the game sort of calculated the damage in that sense, but definitely could end a fight sooner if you had the weapon fully charged.
I felt that on the Nightmare King, I couldn't get it fully charged. You just had to pop off like lots of tiny shots on him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and really learn that pattern. That was tough. But yeah, I even had problems with the King Penguin at first, and I mean that's a fairly straightforward and simple fight, But with the ads and everything and getting used to that new weapon, it took a little while to get used to that, and But again, I thought it was a kind of a neat inclusion into the game. And as I mentioned before, after you finish Topsy Turvy, the stage 7, you finally get you finally find out that you weren't sent to Slumberland to actually be the playmate of the princess. You've sort of been duped. You've been given candy and been duped, right? And so now, oh no, the real reason I sent you here was not to play, but to rescue, King Morpheus, my dad, from the Nightmare King. Yeah, thanks for that. Appreciate that. Fighting this very ghoulish looking Nightmare King, which is who's actually pretty terrifying looking. I mean, for something out of a kid's dream. I mean, it's really well drawn.
Absolutely.
I really love that, and glad you're featuring that on the controller, Russ.
Yeah, that's a good shot of him, open mouth, scary, and everything. You're like, okay.
Yeah. Well, guys, any kind of closing thoughts on the game? Were there any favorite stages or anything that you guys particularly liked, or any types of music that you liked in the game?
I'd have to say probably the first stage is my most favorite because you really get to use a lot of the animals in it.
Yeah. I agree with that.
Yeah, there's a lot of exploring. You get to use that cool mole, and you're like digging through the earth, and there's the frog, and you're like, okay, this guy does this. And yeah, really, it's a good introduction into what the game is going to get into.
Yeah, sort of a tutorial stage, right?
Yeah.
That's exactly what I was going to say, actually. Because I think it really is like the perfect tutorial level, and like everything is sort of like explore and try things out at your own pace.
Sure. Yeah, that level's not bad. It's not very difficult, but man, once you get to Flower Garden, the second level, I probably spent more time on Flower Garden than any level in the game. I really had a tough time with that. I don't know why, but I did. I don't know. I think it's sort of the platforming. I think it had a lot to do with the enemies that you were talking about. The like the little dandelion seeds or whatever that float down, and getting that down pat as those things are falling down, and I'm trying to climb that tree, to get that the lizard or salamander at the beginning stage.
Yep. Yeah.
That was tough. But I will say this, as aggravating as that level was, after going back and listening to the music of the game, it's probably my favorite music in the game, the Flower Garden.
Okay.
Yeah. But my favorite level in the game, I think, was the Night Sea. I really did like the inclusion of an underwater level, maybe taking a few hints from Super Mario Brothers, but it was nice. I like sort of the variation in this game, the different types of levels, and I thought the swimming level in the Night Sea was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed that one.
I was going to point out, too, that how rude the parents are in between each level.
What is that about?
They're like yelling at like Nemo, like go back to bed, and then they're like why us, only our kid, or like something rude like that, and you're like, what?
You guys are gonna think I'm horrible, but gosh, those parents kind of sound like me every night. Just go to bed, guys. Gosh, why are you still up? It's 9:30. Oh.
Another
guys,
thing I was gonna say to add on last minute of this game kind of reminded me of a indie game that I just recently finished and played.
Oh, okay.
Called Teslagrad.
I haven't heard of that. Tell us about it.
It's pretty much, it's a platformer, and it kind of takes place in like the 50s, I would say. And you play as a young boy. You kind of see your dad gets captured by like some people in the city, and they're kind of taking over everything. And you get this. It looks like I'm pretty sure you play with like a wand, almost like as the Morning Star, and you get different abilities that affect like gravity and stuff like that. But I feel like that's what Little Nemo like could have been if it had better hardware on the NES. Maybe if it came out on the Super Nintendo or something like that. Okay.
So is this like this is a Steam game, I'm assuming?
I downloaded it on my Wii U.
Okay.
But I'm sure it's on Steam as well. And it was super fun. But it kind of gave me that same atmosphere because I think the comic strip in the movie of this was kind of like in the 50s era as well.
Uh-huh. Oh, awesome. Well, cool. Well, guys, I appreciate it. Thanks for joining us this month, Russ. We really appreciate you coming on the show and telling us a little bit about the expo. And I speak for Floyd again, but I'm really interested and it's going to be awesome to meet you and hang out for a while, and hopefully we can do some game hunting. I'm crossing my fingers.
Yeah, definitely. I said I took the whole day off, so come to the stores I work at, and we'll hit up some savers and whatnot and see what we find.
All right. Well, I hope all of our listeners will be joining us for our September retro playthrough. Next month, we're going to be playing Metal Gear Solid on the PlayStation, and of course, it's available on several other platforms. It's kind of the game that really got the series sort of moving ahead, and it was just a fantastic game on that system. There's a lot of tactical, as it says, tactical espionage, right? So there's a lot of really great action scenes, great cut scenes, and just a lot of cool stealth that you had to employ in the game, and was one of my favorites when I was in college. And hopefully, as some of you may know, I will not be hosting it next month. Shawn will be coming over to the retro side to host it, and I will be going over to the modern side to do Indigo Prophecy. So trying to work my way through some Indigo Prophecy right now, and hopefully I can jump in on Metal Gear Solid. Just such a great game, and I love it so much. So excited about that next month. Well, thanks for joining us, guys, and as always, happy gaming.
So over on our modern side for August, Steven chose a game that's a little more cerebral than our standard fare on the modern side. Steven, please tell us what made you choose Spec Ops: The Line for our modern playthrough.
Yeah, well, it's a game I'd heard about a lot over the last couple of years since it came out, and I'd heard that it's, has a very interesting story, much more so than a lot of these, kind of military third-person shooters, and takes a lot of interesting twists and turns. So it's one that I have been wanting to play since it first came out. It didn't quite get the best reception, I think, on the forum.
Yeah, it's too bad. We only had one participant other than the two of us, which was Eric Escapade over in Germany. He's in Germany, right?
Yes, I believe so.
Yeah, he's awesome. I always love when he joins in because his grasp on the English language is interesting, to put it mildly, and I actually like reading his writing. But yeah, we didn't have too much participation here, which is a shame because this game really deserves some attention and some in-depth analysis, which hopefully you and I can give it at this point. We've done some incredible amounts of preparation for this show, so I hope we can kind of dig into what's going on here. Because what we have is something that we don't see very often in the video game space, which is a deconstruction of a genre, and it's something really amazing that came out in this game. So
yeah, I really tried to sell it. Everywhere I mentioned the game, I was like, it's not your typical third-person shooter. There's more than meets the eye. There's a lot going on here. I thought I might attract some attention with those comments, but it didn't quite seem to work. So just is what it is. It's kind of really par for the course for modern playthroughs most of the time. But
yep, yeah, the modern we don't get no respect over here, so
it's fine.
That's all right. Yep, no. But we're here, and we're going to talk about this game. So yeah, give us a little bit of background on Spec Ops, because it's actually an old franchise that kind of got, I don't know if you can call it a reboot or revitalization, but
yeah, it's Spec Ops. There were several releases back in like the late 90s on I think on PC and on the PS1, but I think they're pretty different, pretty standard third-person shooter fare. I haven't actually played them, so I'm not sure, but
yeah, they're kind of like Rainbow Six light, like a really watered down Rainbow Six kind of game.
But I don't think they have the kind of narrative like Spec Ops: The Line has. I don't
think
it comes close.
Nope.
But Spec Ops: The Line was released in 2012 on PC, Xbox 360, and PS3. It was developed by Jaeger Development, which is a German company, so maybe that's why we caught Eric's attention with this one.
Perhaps.
True. Published by 2K Games. On the surface, it's a military cover-based third-person shooter featuring some light squad-based mechanics. I've heard that the story is largely inspired by a novel by the name of Heart of Darkness, although I'm not really familiar with it.
Yeah, that's true. I wanted to read this book before. I've been wanting to read this book forever. A lot of people have to read it in high school. I never had the pleasure. But yeah, it's a very influential work exploring the horrors of war. Basically, the movie Apocalypse Now was also based on it, and Spec Ops is hugely based on it. Even the character Conrad is a tribute to the novel's author, Joseph Conrad.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I'm not really not much of a reader myself, but I guess if I ever were to pick up a book, that would probably be one of the top contenders, something I might check out, but don't really do a lot of reading on my own time. So anyway, talk a little bit about the kind of give a little story overview before we kind of dive into the meat of the story. Kind of starts out with, you have a small squad of Delta Force operatives sent into Dubai after a series of massive sandstorms has rendered the city uninhabitable and just completely destroyed the city. You play as the Delta Squad leader, Martin Walker, Your mission is to locate the survivors of the 33rd Brigade led by Colonel Conrad.
Right.
Yeah, so that's just the setup for the story. We'll talk a little bit about the gameplay, I guess, now.
Sure.
Yeah, just like we said before, just kind of standard third-person shooter fare. It's I guess by most other standards, it's kind of mediocre, admittedly. No, not the best gameplay. It's not bad. It's not anything exceptional either.
Right. It's kind of it's almost like it's dated because there's a lot of the things we've talked about month after month about the modern trappings of modern video games, as far as like for example, in Spec Ops there's no upgrade system, there's no leveling, there's no experience. It really is a bare bones cover shooter. It could I mean, mechanically it could have been a PS2 game.
Yeah. I guess as far as like the leveling up systems and upgrades and things, like I guess it didn't really occur to me while playing it, although you're right, it doesn't have anything like that. But I guess sometimes those systems seem kind of contrived anyway. So I guess I didn't really mind that it didn't have that.
Right, and I think as we get into actually the analysis of the game, I think it would have went again, like having an upgrade system or a leveling mechanic would have went against the ambitions of the developers as far as
that's a good
what
point.
They were trying to do. So
I think a central theme of the game is like degradation, and so it doesn't really make sense to kind of continually upgrade.
Right.
Kind of goes against that. It does feature some kind of light squad-based mechanics, but I feel like these were kind of tacked on, really.
Yeah, most of the time I forgot about them until the game kind of reminds you when it pops up and says, hey, tell your guy to throw a flashbang here.
Well,
you know?
I think the flashbang things, you can only do it when you're prompted, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, okay.
Otherwise, you can assign a target for your squad mates to shoot at.
Right.
I think the first time I played it, I think I completely forgot about it for like at least half the game. I made better use of it later. When I remembered it, but I felt like they could have done a lot more. Like maybe they could have had you like position your squad mates in certain places to sort of like set up. I don't want to say ambushes, but like strategic locations for your allies to sort of set up and shoot at the enemies. But you can't do that. The only thing you can do is just have them shoot at your targets.
Right.
So yeah, I feel like it was kind of a missed opportunity there.
Yeah, and something a little deeper might have helped what is basically one of the major flaws of the game, and I don't want to get too super far ahead of everything, but let's just say if there were mechanics that binded Lugo, Adams, and Walker closer together, it would make certain things that happen after the twist that you realize, it would make them a little bit more believable. But I don't want to get ahead of myself. Yeah. You know, we're talking about gameplay here. So
I guess the other kind of interesting gameplay aspect is that you can sort of use the environment to your advantage sometimes. This game, of course, it takes place in Dubai, so it's a desert environment, and there's like sand. You know, there are places where you can shoot out windows and sand will pour in and, you know, cover your enemies, just bury them. Yeah,
that was cool. And there's a lot of also buildings that are falling apart. So there's a lot of times where guys are standing on top of, you know, glass platforms, and you could just shoot out the glass and make them fall through. It's really cool.
Yeah, that was always satisfying to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't really make too much use of it, but I think if you like throw a grenade in the sand, it sort of like kicks up the sand and it kind of blinds your enemies. I don't know, it didn't really seem to be that effective in my opinion, but it was there. But yeah, it was there were places where using the sand was really cool. I feel like it seemed like kind of scripted though, the places where you were supposed to do it.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, like I feel like there were very few moments where you kind of do it where the game basically didn't put a crosshair over the glass and say, "Hey, shoot this out."
Yeah, that happens a few times. Literally, it tells you to do it as like a objective. But yeah, there are times here and there where you can do it, which is neat.
Yeah.
And you do, like, I think there's a achievement for using the environment. I forget what it was called, but I saw that like kind of popping up on the screen every once in a while, that I was doing that. So
Yeah.
that could also have to do with like exploding red barrels, or you can shoot apart like a lot of the architecture that, like, it's basically there are a lot of destructible environments that have nothing to do with gameplay. That's more just a kind of a good cosmetic effect when you're shooting.
And sometimes you can like destroy cover. So if like your enemies are hiding behind cover, or if you're hiding behind cover, the enemies can destroy it.
Right.
It kind of create some tense moments where you're all of a sudden left without cover and you need to scramble to another short wall or something to hide behind. But yeah, I think unless you have anything else to add about the gameplay, you'll probably talk a little bit about graphics and music and things like that.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the main takeaway for the gameplay is that it's basic, and that's by design. It's supposed to be, and we'll get into why that is. But yeah, his presentation in this game was a real big thing. They used a lot of licensed music in this game, which was a lot of it was used to really cool effect.
It was kind of like 70s rock sometimes, I believe. During like the firefights, the shootouts, and I wouldn't think that style of music would work very well for those type of moments, but it actually did work really well. It just seemed like it really fit. I was surprised.
I agree. I thought it was really cool, and it was kind of a throwback again to the almost like the I think the developers intended it to kind of remind you of the Vietnam war movies, like Apocalypse Now and Platoon and all those other movies like that. But I mean, the title screen has the Jimi Hendrix version of the national anthem playing in the background, and also there's a really like on the nose use of Nowhere to Hide by Martha and the Vandellas, which is a great song, and it's you're supposed to be like finding someone, so this song is playing while you're hunting them down, and it's which, you know, a little on the nose, but I thought it was cool.
I think it sort of puts it into context by, I'm not sure, but I think sometimes during these like shootout parts, it was the radio man was actually playing the song through the airwaves. Okay,
yeah, so it's more literally contextual.
I think so. I'm not positive, but I think that's what was happening there.
Mm-hmm.
There was also some original music in the game, and most of it was kind of in the background. I will say that the part that plays at the end, the kind of sort of most climactic moment in the game, I thought it was really a really good track. It really sort of amped up that feeling of this being the climax of the game. I'm not really trying not to say what that is yet, because we haven't really gotten to it, but that was just one that really stuck out to me. Otherwise I didn't notice the original music very much. But
yeah, same here. It must have been one of those cases where it did its job, because I didn't notice it, or think any parts of it were bad or particularly great. So, and it was
good. It just kind of was in the background most of the time, and it kind of gave me like a Silent Hill vibe. Maybe it's just me. And I actually went and looked up if this game was composed by Akira Yamaoka, who did the music for the original Silent Hill games, and of course it wasn't, but I kind of had that vibe from it, so I was curious. I don't know what you think about the graphics.
They're fine. I mean, I don't have any major complaints. Their environments are pretty detailed. Like, there's enough detail there that I did kind of stop and look around every once in a while. It's not as good as, say, like an Uncharted game, or even as good as the Tomb Raider reboot that we played a couple months ago. Mm-hmm. But for being a wasteland city, kind of urban desert environment, I don't have any complaints. Like, there wasn't any intricate, amazing details in the graphics. But like I said, I did have some like kind of stop and look around moments while playing. So
Yeah, like seeing some of the architecture off in the distance is cool. You actually see the Burj Khalifa off in the distance, which, if I'm not mistaken, is the tallest tower in the world. I think I've read.
Okay.
So it's kind of cool to see that off in the distance. I mean, it's kind of hard to say because this game came out in 2012 and trying to, now it's 2015 and obviously graphics have improved considerably since. So, I didn't play the game when it first came out, so it's kind of hard for me to judge it objectively on the graphics. But I kind of agree with what you said. It's no complaints. It's fine for what it is.
Yeah, exactly.
I guess it seems a little bland because you are in the desert, so sometimes it's just desert all around you.
Yeah,
but I think that's obviously that's what you're going to get when it's just the setting of the game.
Right.
And we can talk a little bit about the voice acting. We had our old friend Nolan North.
right. Which is actually, I think using Nolan North detracts a little bit from the game. And maybe it's just another part of what the developers are trying to do. Maybe they wanted to put a big name on it and a recognizable main character voicing for Walker, but I don't know. I think we're all at a point where we have like Nolan North fatigue. So I think the game would have been served better to have a little lesser known of a person playing the lead. But having said that, I mean, it's Nolan North. You get what you get. So
I mean, I really enjoyed his voice acting in this game. I mean, I know a lot of times if Nolan North is in a game, your main character is going to sound like Drake,
right?
Which I guess is a problem. But I thought he did a good job of sort of going from like stern military commander guy to basically sounding like a maniac at the end. He kind of transitioned to that pretty well, I think. Which I don't know. I'm not really, I don't really know of a lot of voice actors. I don't really follow that a whole lot, but, I probably couldn't even name any other than, Nolan North and Troy Baker. But, I don't know. It just seems like that'd be something that would be difficult to do, that kind of transition while staying in the same character.
Yeah. And that's fair. I mean, to say he did a good job, obviously. That's why he gets hired for every single game that comes out.
Yeah. But, yeah, there were other, I thought all the voice acting in the game I thought was well done. I don't really know who any of the other voice actors were, but all the other characters seemed really well done, in my opinion.
Yeah. Again, no major complaints on the voice acting either. I thought, your partners there, Lugo and Adams were really well done as well. So. Again, you're part of this group throughout the whole game, and they need to be convincing and kind of endearing to you, and I think they definitely were. At least, endearing to you in the beginning of the game.
Yeah, things start to get a little more...
Yeah, things change.
There's more conflict as
right.
as it moves along. But so yeah, I guess...
Which is the payoff for the bonding in the beginning of the game. Yeah. So yeah.
Yeah, like in the first scene of the game, when Chapter 1 starts, it's very jovial and lighthearted. They're cracking jokes with each other. And, by the end of the game, they're practically at each other's throats.
Right.
So I guess, speaking of which, we'll kind of start talking about the story. Now, my original intention was basically go through the entire plot of the game, which I thought might be kind of necessary to really understand what's going on, because there is a lot of things going on, a lot of subtext, and
right.
It's kind of... I don't know, but I thought it might get too long-winded, so we're just going to focus more on the kind of major and more interesting plot points. So the game kicks off with a prologue and this opening helicopter chase scene where your main character, Martin Walker, is manning this mounted turret gun, and you have choppers chasing after you, and you're flying through the city of Dubai. Yeah, so they kicked the game off with a bang here, and I don't know. What'd you think about this scene? Did you enjoy it?
Well, just as far as from a gameplay perspective and a way to start the game, I mean, we've discussed on this show before how much, well, speaking for myself, how much I love turret sequences.
Yeah.
So, like, it had me hooked right from the beginning, like shooting helicopters with the minigun.
Yeah, and I thought it was, because a lot of games start off with like slow and boring cutscenes, and this one just kind of throws you right into the thick of it.
Right.
With this like very over the top, heavy action scene, and it is, once you play it a couple of times, you see how scripted it is. Really,
Yeah.
you're not really impacting a whole lot because all the enemy choppers crash in the same locations every time, and and it makes it really cool to watch because they'll crash into buildings, and then there's all this environmental damage, and like you see like these cranes like falling over, and it's cool, but I guess after you play it once, it's kind of loses its charm because it's the same thing every time.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, then at the end of that little scene, there's a sandstorm hits, and an enemy chopper crashes into yours, and the screen goes black. And that's the end of the prologue, pretty much.
Right. So then we go into a flashback, which is the bulk of the game.
So yeah, most of the game is played from a flashback perspective, starting from that helicopter crash, because you do replay that later in the game. Just going to jump ahead, I guess, to Chapter 7, because not really a whole lot happens in Chapters 1 through 6. There's a few little things here and there, but you're mostly just fighting bad guys.
Sure, and you're, I guess the most important takeaway is that you're just introduced. Walker and his squad mates are introduced, and their mission is to find the survivors of the 33rd, their insurrection.
Right. Yeah.
So you go in thinking you're going to start looking for bad guys and shooting them, and then it starts that way, and then things start to unfold. Which is where, you were just about to say in Chapter 7, stuff starts getting real.
Yeah. There's a moment, and it's a little bit of foreshadowing, but there's a part where your team sort of steps out into the open, and then there's this bright flash of light, and this white phosphorus rains down and just starts burning all these like soldiers in front of you, and they're just like dying in this horrific way. I think that's the 33rd. I guess it's important to note that the 33rd split into two factions.
Right.
You have the damned 33rd led by Conrad, and then the exiled who split away. We'll talk more about kind of all the politics between all the groups in a little bit, but yeah, I think that's like the damned 33rd sending a message to the exile I think that's what's going on here. I'm not sure exactly who are the victims of that white phosphorus attack, but I think that's what's happening.
No, I think you're right.
Yeah.
That's exactly what it is.
So that's a little bit of foreshadowing, and we'll see what that kind of leads to in a bit. Also in Chapter 7, there's a little hostage situation. There's a CIA agent named Gould who is being held at gunpoint by the 33rd. And there's also a group of civilians there, and you have this choice you can make between, do you want to save Gould or do you want to save the civilians? And your teammates, Adams and Lugo, are basically playing the angel and the devil on your shoulder, almost literally.
Yeah, because they are to your left and to your right, and kind of talking in each ear.
Adams is like, let's go this way to save the civilians, and Lugo's like, no, over here, we got to save Gould. He's our only chance to get out of here, or whatever, to find out what's going on. And so it doesn't really matter what you do here, and that's kind of true for most of the decisions in the game. They don't really make much of a difference, which I found a little disappointing. If you choose to save Gould, then Gould dies anyway. Everybody dies. The civilians die.
Right.
And if you save the civilians, then the civilians live, but Gould still dies. And there's some difference in the dialogue between your teammates, between what happens there. But yeah, I guess the first time I played the game, I saved the civilians. I replayed it. I saved Gould just to see what the difference was, but there really wasn't any difference.
Okay, yeah. I went for the civilians just because I don't know.
Yeah, it kind of seems like the right thing to do. And in hindsight, after you play this scene, it definitely is, because, like I said, if you try to save Gould, then everybody dies. And at least you can save the civilians. But yeah, after that scene, you basically find a map on Gould's body that leads you to this location called the Gate, which is where Chapter 8 kicks off. And this is kind of the big, infamous scene in the game. You're overlooking this large group of soldiers, and you decide that you can't take them in a head-on fight. And if you try to, you will die. The game is programmed in a way that you will die if you try to fight them head-on.
Oh, that's cool. I didn't know that. I didn't try that.
Yeah.
And I tried doing like sequence breaking stuff like that, but I didn't try that. That's cool to know.
Yeah. So what you end up doing, and you kind of have Adams and Lugo playing the angel and the devil again. Although this is an actual choice you can really make. You have to do this. But there's this cannon with white phosphorus. And Adams is like, yeah, let's use this against these soldiers. It's the only way to get through there. And so that's what you do. You control this cannon thing and burn all these soldiers alive.
Right, and it's a gameplay sequence reminiscent of the ones from Call of Duty where you're in the
like a drone kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. So you're looking from a top down. The cool thing about this scene is that you have that detached perspective of looking at the overhead as if you're in a drone or whatever, and you just see the heat signals of the heat signatures of the people.
Right.
But you can see Walker's reflection on the computer that he's using to do it, and I thought that was a really awesome touch, because it kind of, it's almost like looking into a mirror that's facing a mirror, and it's just a million reflections looking at each other, because you're watching Walker, you're controlling yourself, controlling Walker. It's really deep, man, I'm telling you. But I thought that was a cool touch. So anyway, you're raining death on what you initially think are, these soldiers who are in your way. But then what happens, man?
Yeah, when you get to the end of that part, there's a cluster of people. And like you said, you can only see their heat signatures, so you can't actually see like who these people are. You just see people, and you assume they're all soldiers. And when you get to the end, there's like this trench area, and there's like a big cluster of people. And personally, when I played that part, I found it really satisfying to just drop the bomb on all these people. I was like, yeah, I'm gonna kill all these enemies. And it's just like a big cluster of them, and it feels really cool. And then when you get down there and you inspect everything you've done, you find out that group of people were actually civilians. Like innocent civilians. They weren't soldiers. And they were actually, the 33rd was actually trying to protect them. They moved them from an earlier location, trying to keep them out of harm's way, out of the battle zones. And this is it probably doesn't translate well to us just talking about it, but a lot of people I've heard when they play this scene, it's the kind of thing where they have to like put the controller down and sort of collect themselves.
Yeah, definitely. Especially the first time you play it. Obviously, I mean, when you see it coming and you can kind of analyze it a little bit and think about what the developers were trying to do, and what it means from an analysis type perspective or whatever. It's kind of weird. Like when you get to the end, like the reason I'm saying this is because I played the game years ago, like when it came out, and now, or maybe it wasn't that long ago. It was like 2 years ago, and then like playing it now, I got to the secret that sequence. I'm like, oh, here it comes, and then at the end, I saw the people, and I was like, oh man, that's it. And it's like you can't not do it. You have to shoot because there's a tank or something on top, like shooting at you, and you have to get it. But it's so brilliantly set up in a way that, like you said, you think you're hitting the mother lode of enemy soldiers, which is always fun in a game. It's always fun to blow something up with a ton of enemies near it, and man, what a slap in the face when you really find out what happened, what you did, you know?
Yeah, I mean, it was shocking to like you said, to see they weren't soldiers, they were, you know, innocent civilians, and I mean, I wasn't really affected too much. I think I'm just so desensitized by games that it doesn't really faze me that much, but I still was kind of taken aback by it. Yeah, this is like where things really start to kind of change in the game, and the mood and the tone starts to change a lot. And there's this scene where Walker's like looking at these civilians, and he's particularly looking at this like the charred remains of a mother like holding her child.
Right.
And he sort of just zones in on it. And Adams and Lugo are just arguing in the background, and he's like toning them out. And you know, this is like Walker's breaking point. You know, this is the part where he really starts like his mental state starts degrading.
Definitely.
Yeah, I mean,
and this is the point where you pretty much lose Lugo as well.
Yeah, he's not the happy-go-lucky guy he was
right
prior to that. He really his mood really changes for the rest of the game here. He, of course, he blames Walker because Walker said we don't have a choice in using the white phosphorus. We have to do this in order to progress. And Lugo was like, no, we always have a choice. You know, we don't have to do this. You've seen what this stuff does. We can't do this.
Right.
So yeah, he really has a chip on his shoulder for the rest of the game. But yeah, that scene, like Walker's just like zoned out looking at those two corpses, and then he just sort of snaps out of it. And he's like, okay, let's keep moving. Almost like nothing even happened. He's like, let's just keep moving. And he blames the 33rd. He blames Conrad. One thing, like, we'll kind of get into this more, but there are certain things in the game that aren't as they appear. Like, this is like a flashback sequence. Like, this is all still a part of the flashback from the helicopter sequence from before.
Right.
But, yeah, things, you find out later that things don't always happen the way that you see them in the game. And I think this might be one of those parts. This is my personal opinion. I haven't really seen anything that proves this either way, but I think this is one of those things where Walker sort of like tricks himself into thinking that they didn't have a choice in using the white phosphorus. Like, I think from a narrative standpoint, there may have been another option. From a gameplay standpoint, there isn't. You have to use the white phosphorus, but
right.
I think from a narrative point of view, there's there may well have been another option that they chose to believe that this was the only option, if that makes sense.
Sure. Yeah, no, definitely.
And I haven't seen any evidence to support that, but that's just this game has a theme of like Walker constantly placing the blame for all the things he does on other people. And so for at the beginning of this scene, for Walker to say we don't have a choice, that's what really kind of makes me think that. But yeah, so after that scene, they move on a little bit, and they find this sort of like little outpost, where you find where Conrad, I guess, was set up at one point. Conrad again is who Walker is looking for. He finds this radio that he starts communicating with Conrad.
Right.
And we'll talk more about that in a little bit too. Don't want to give away too much too early, but
yeah.
So yeah, chapter 9 is the next chapter, and it sort of I think the only real thing of interest here is there's this scene where you come across this little bridge where two bodies are hanging, and Conrad is telling you through the radio that you have to choose one, and that one of these guys is was a soldier who was sent after the other guy, who and he was like a guy who was stealing water for his family. And,
right.
And they say, since this is the desert and it's like a emergency zone or whatever, water is very scarce. He says stealing water is a capital offense. But when the soldier goes to apprehend this guy, he ends up killing his family in the process. He kills like 5 innocent people.
Right.
So Conrad's putting you in this like little sick game where he's asking you to choose, you know, who should die for this, you know, who should be punished, and you have to choose one.
Right. However, well, this is one of those secret.
Yeah, there's a secret third option.
Right.
Of you can shoot the snipers around you.
Right.
I actually tried that the first time and I died. So I was kind of.
I actually tried to run away the first time, and I think Lugo got killed or something crazy happened. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah, I think running isn't. I've actually looked into this a lot. I think running isn't an option. Like something will happen, but you can kill those snipers.
Yeah, that's what I did.
I tried that once and it didn't work. I ended up dying. So I kind of thought that it was one of those things where you were going to die regardless. So I ended up choosing one of those dudes. I think the first time I shot the soldier who killed the other guy's family. But again, this is one of those moments where we'll talk a little bit more about it in a moment as well, because it's not everything's not as it appears in this game. So Chapter 10 has you meeting a CIA agent by the name of Riggs. His plan is to steal these water trucks from this like a coliseum area where like pretty much Dubai's only source of water is being stored. Of course, stealing the water is going to like cripple the 33rd. That's what he tells you. It would cripple their operations because, you know, water's the key to everything out in the desert.
Right.
So yeah, you fight through this area and you steal these water trucks, and you're kind of in this on-rail sequence where you're armed with a grenade launcher and trying to defend these trucks from the 33rd that are attacking you, trying to get the trucks back. Yeah, I thought that was an interesting little section. You have an infinite supply of grenades to shoot with your grenade launcher, blowing up vehicles and soldiers around you.
Right, and it's one of those things that you're supposed to feel guilty for enjoying, but it is you know, satisfying and bombastic and Rambo-esque, you know.
Yeah, it's just another one of those over the top moments.
Definitely, yeah, that's a good way to put it, over the top. So the trucks crash, right? And Riggs is pinned under it, giving you another choice in the game. Yeah,
I think Riggs just says, you know, nobody's getting this water. You know, if I'll crash the trucks before I let the 33rd have it back.
Right.
So that's what he does. He crashes the trucks, and then he's pinned under one of the trucks, which is on fire.
Right.
He can't move, and you go up to him. He kind of reveals his plan, and that's like the CIA was sent in to see what was going on with Conrad and the 33rd, and basically the CIA is trying to cover up everything that happened, because apparently Conrad, when he kind of took over in Dubai, he was very harsh. He is put in a state of martial law, and he imposed harsh penalties for anybody who disobeyed his rules. He executed people in these, you know, sometimes very painful ways. He used white phosphorus sometimes on some of his own, like, lieutenants who disobeyed him. And, yeah, the CIA seems to believe that if, this gets out to, like, the rest of the world, particularly the Middle Eastern area, that they will, declare war on the United States, and they don't believe that's a war that they can win. That's what, Riggs actually says.
Right.
And, so that's kind of the whole plan for stealing the water and crashing the trucks, is that, he's just trying to kill everybody, pretty much, to cover up what happened.
Mm-hmm.
So then you are faced with a decision here. You can either choose to shoot Riggs or let him burn to death.
Yeah.
So
and this one doesn't even have, this one has even less impact on anything.
It doesn't really matter.
This is going to sound really funny, but I was playing last night. I was trying to marathon the game, and they give you a 45 with one bullet in it, and I went to shoot him and I missed.
I've heard of people doing that.
So I missed, and then I kind of like nonchalantly walked away. Whoops.
Oh, sorry about that. So I'll leave you to burn then.
Yeah. So that was my quote unquote choice.
Yeah, I played through the game twice just to clarify. So on my second playthrough, I did like the other choice. The first time I shot him, second time I just left him to burn. It's interesting because it kind of changes some of the scenery depending on what you do, which is kind of a subtle touch, and most people won't notice it. And I didn't notice it. I saw it in like a YouTube video that pointed it out. But there's like some graffiti on the wall nearby, and it's like if you shoot him, the graffiti shows like a guy being shot in the head or something. If you don't shoot him, it shows like a figure being burned.
Oh, wow.
Feeling them burn. So it's kind of interesting that it kind of messes with the environment in that way, and kind of little subtle things that you really won't overtly notice.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I guess moving on to chapter 12, I guess.
Yeah, I was gonna say Radio Man is probably the next big.
Yeah, there's this. We talked a little bit about him, but there's this guy they just refer to as the Radio Man. He's for most of the game, he's just coming over the airwaves and sort of taunting you, and you don't really know too much about him, but he's kind of working with the 33rd, and yeah, he's sort of a thorn in your side through most of the game. So then you finally reach the radio tower, and you reach the top, and your goal is to send out a message about the evacuation, trying to evacuate Dubai and get all the people out of there, and Lugo ends up shooting Riggs in the head.
Radio Man, you mean?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I was looking at my notes and I saw the name Riggs. Yeah, Radio Man. His name was also Robert Darden. You find that out through the intel files.
Right.
So yeah, Lugo kills him. You rush out to a helicopter to try to escape. You destroy the radio tower, and you're doing another little on rails turret sequence when you destroy the radio tower. But what's interesting is after that, you actually replay the helicopter sequence from the prologue.
Right.
And the interesting thing about that is, like I said, everything before that was supposed to be a flashback, but then when you replay it, Walker says, wait a minute, this isn't right, we've already done this.
Right. That was a cool moment. And
yeah.
what I think we should do at this point, Stephen, is maybe just kind of lay the ending out on the table.
Put the cards on the table.
Yeah, exactly. We should just say, explain what happens at the ending, and then we'll kind of reverse back on the actual plot and what it actually means. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
but we're pretty much there anyway.
Yeah. So you have the helicopter scene again. You have the same crash. Like you said, it's the same thing as the beginning, and then that's where you go through the hell scene, right?
Yeah, when you wake up, everything's looks like it's on fire.
Right.
And you see like dead bodies, I think they're like walking around, and they're kind of like blaming you for the things you've done.
Mm-hmm.
Not long after that, it's actually an important plot scene where you find Lugo lynched by an angry mob of civilians.
Oh yeah, this is another one of the major choices.
Yeah. Yeah, so after you kind of shoot him down, like you shoot the rope that's holding him up so he'll fall down, and you try to resuscitate him, and it doesn't work. He ends up dying. And Adams is standing there with his gun pointed at the civilians, and he says, just give me the order, Walker, I'll open fire.
Right.
And you have the choice here. You can... I don't know if the game actually spells it out for you that you have a choice. I think it's...
oh, it definitely doesn't. And I think this was one of the more interesting choices in the game, because... I don't remember what I did the first time I played it, but this time when I played it, I was trying to figure out what to do other than just opening fire.
Right.
And what I ended up doing was, because you can't turn around and go back, you can't move forward, I ended up just meleeing one of the people in front of me, and they all started running away. Which I guess is the same result that you get if you shoot a warning shot in the air, which is supposed to be the good, the quote-unquote good choice. Otherwise, you could just open fire, which is,
Yeah, and the first time I played the game, I did open fire on the civilians. And then the second time I did what you did, I meleeed one of them, and they ran off. But I have to say, and this might sound really bad, but when I did the choice that scared the civilians away, it felt like the wrong choice. I don't know if you felt that way, but I mean, I guess technically it's the right thing to do, the more humane thing to do, but
right.
I guess in terms of the context of the game and what I thought Walker would actually do, it seemed like the wrong decision.
Sure. If you are role-playing as Walker and you want to avenge Lugo, you would definitely open fire.
Yeah, and I like I said, when I scared them off, I really didn't feel satisfied with that.
Right. That's a good point. I didn't really think about it that way, but yeah, definitely. And then he would, I'm sure he says, we had no choice. Like, I didn't do it, but does he? He says no. Look what they did to Lugo. We didn't have a choice.
Probably. I don't really remember. But yeah, that's kind of the running theme. He says a lot of things like that.
Right.
So I guess now we'll get to the end, which is the big plot twist in the game. So
Absolutely.
Throughout the entire game, or not the entire game, but ever since chapter 8, where you find the radio, you're talking to Conrad through like the whole game, and he's sort of telling you all these different things, like you can't do this, you're placing the blame on me, but you're really to blame. How this is all going to end. He's saying those kind of things. When you finally confront Conrad, you find out that Conrad's been dead for the entire game. Right.
Dun dun dun.
Yeah. You kind of there's a scene where you're kind of talking to him, but it's like an hallucination. He's painting a picture of like the scene you saw for the burned civilians.
Right, the victims of your white phosphorus attack.
And then when you kind of walk forward, you see that his dead body is sitting in a chair.
Yeah.
And he's still kind of talking to you, this sort of out-of-body thing. But that's kind of the whole twist of the game, is that Walker, by this point, is like crazy. His mental state is completely been broken down, and Conrad was sort of a split personality that he created in his mind to sort of place the blame and point the finger for all the things that he did.
Right.
So yeah, you're given this other choice now. You're holding a gun in your hand, and you're like pointing at a reflection. It's kind of a strange scene. You're pointing the gun at a reflection, and it's also pointing the gun back at you.
Right.
And the reflection is you see both yourself and Conrad in the reflection, and you have the choice. You can either shoot yourself, or you can shoot Conrad, or you can let Conrad shoot you. But that's results in the exact same thing as shooting yourself.
Right.
So yeah, that's one possible ending you can get, is essentially suicide. Right.
And if you kill yourself, that the credits roll and the game's over. But if you kill Conrad, you get another segment of gameplay which presents you with yet another choice. Yeah, there's a little epilogue sequence where you see Walker. He's like waiting for evac to arrive, and he's got a gun in his hand, and he's wearing Conrad's uniform for some reason. So yeah, you have another choice. You can either open fire on the evac team, or you can just lay your gun down and go with them. Right. What'd you do here? I'm curious. The first time I did it, you know what? It's funny, when I played the game 2 years ago or whatever it was, I don't think I got the epilogue because I didn't even know there was one. I don't think. If there was, I didn't remember it whatsoever. So I must have just killed myself the first time I played the game back in the day. I guess it's also important to note that if you let Conrad's in that other scene, if you let Conrad shoot you, that's also the same as like killing yourself. Okay, it results in the same ending as if you shoot yourself. Okay, so you'll only get the epilogue if you shoot Conrad. the Conrad figment of your imagination. Yeah, it's not really Conrad. You're not shooting his dead corpse. You're shooting like this representation of Conrad that's sort of exists in your mind. Right. So yeah, I shot this time. I shot Conrad, and in the epilogue, the first time I did it, I handed my gun over and just went with the evacuation team. Okay. And then after that, what I did, just for the sake of knowing what happened in this discussion and everything was I went back to the chapter. I killed myself. I killed Conrad. I let Conrad kill me. I killed all the I wanted to see everything. Yeah. But the first time I did it, I turned my gun over, and this is where I think this would be a perfect place to actually open the discussion to the player agency analysis here, because when you hand your gun over to the soldier, you actually get a trophy that says like, or at least I was playing on PS3, so it's a trophy, and it said like a little too late or something like that, like you're the hero now, too late or something. I can't remember.
Yeah, I don't remember myself, but yeah, the first time I played the game, I actually opened fire.
Okay.
Because I didn't really see after everything Walker had been through. I don't know, I kind of didn't really feel like he would just lay his gun down and go peacefully with the soldiers.
Yeah, again,
and there's that can end in a couple different ways. Actually, you can either you will kill all the soldiers, and I guess imply that Walker will die just like a couple of days from thirst or dehydration or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Or you can, or they'll kill you, which is what happened to me. The soldiers ended up killing me.
Does them killing you give you like an ending?
Yeah.
And not just you die and respawn? Okay, cool.
Yeah. So you sort of
didn't try that one.
You're just kind of laying there in a pool of your own blood, and Walker kind of remembers this thing that Conrad told him in Kabul, which is like another conflict that they were in together, about like how there's a line like there's a line that men like us have to cross, and you can't come home or something like that. And that's pretty much where the game ends, if you do that option.
Oh, okay.
And I guess it's important to note that when the writers made this game, they made it in such a way that no matter what option you pick, Walker does not live. Like, even if you go with the evac team, he doesn't live, because the game has a way of telling you when there's sort of like a distortion or a hallucination, and that's there are these like white and black transitions, and anywhere a scene fades to white, that means there's something there is not as it appears.
Right.
And if you go with the evac team, it fades to white.
Oh, okay.
And that's actually, I've actually read straight from the writer's mouth, I guess you would say, technically. But yeah, that it was important to them to write the story in such a way that Walker dies. Like, even if you go with the evac team, it's all in his head. He's really just sort of waiting around until he dies.
Okay. Yeah, there's even a really kind of on the nose line where the soldiers who's driving you says, "Wow, like that it looks crazy back there. I wonder how you survived it all." Yeah. And he says, "Maybe I didn't."
Yeah, exactly. This kind of gives you that little cryptic thing. He's sort of, I guess, hinting at it.
Right.
So yeah, I guess now, like you said, we'll kind of start talking about some of the themes in the game, all the sort of story analysis, what's going on here, some of the important things. Because I noticed for me, when I finished the game the first time, I really wasn't sure what actually happened and what didn't happen. Because like I said, anywhere there's a scene fades to black, it means it's supposed to be reality, what actually happened. And anywhere a scene fades to white is some sort of hallucination or a distortion of Walker's memories. Like, he's remembering it differently to sort of fit his own idea of what he thinks happened, or however you want to think about that. But
right.
I don't know, did you feel that way when you first played it as well?
No, I didn't. The first time I played it, I didn't go too deep into like understanding those kind of things and those clues and the context of everything. And I didn't think I was playing just another shooter. Like, I knew this was something different and special, but I didn't dig so deep into those like hints that I knew what was going on. This time I certainly did.
Yeah. And if I had played the game earlier as well, and I didn't play it for a community playthrough, I probably would have done the same thing. I probably would have just finished the game, not really worried about the story, and just moved on to something else.
Right.
But since I knew since it was a community playthrough, I knew we'd have to discuss it on the podcast, and I should know what's going on in the story. I put more thought into it, and it took me a while to kind of I did a couple of playthroughs of this game, and I did a lot of research on the internet, and I think I more or less have it figured out now, but I'm still not even 100% sure on some of the things. That's kind of, it's written that way intentionally. It's intentionally left open to interpretation. I feel like they kind of give you enough pieces to make some of the more popular theories fit, but at the same time put enough contradictions in there that you may not, that you could sort of refute those theories as well.
Right.
One thing that's interesting is this game likes to break the fourth wall.
Yeah, exactly. This, like I said when at the beginning of the discussion, this is really like kind of a deconstruction of the modern shooter. It's like the anti-modern shooter. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
And yeah, one of the things it does is tries to, we've alluded to how many times Walker says, I didn't have a choice, or, you guys made me do this, or Conrad made me do it, or whatever. Like the whole point and where the rubber meets the road is that this is a game about player agency, and there's so many there's so many lines that I noticed playing through it this time where it's not just Walker saying we didn't have a choice or whatever, but there's so many times where Walker or someone else will say, well, I guess we just have to keep shooting. Well, I guess we just have to keep killing anybody that gets in our way. And it's like, oh yeah, that's what playing a shooter game is. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like playing this game, you're kind of like a guinea pig, and there's so many people who have like said it better than I can, but it's really a game that kind of like points its finger at you for playing it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Pretty late in the game, you start getting these loading screens that start sending you these messages.
Right.
Like at the beginning of the game, it's just like, it's kind of giving you like tips, just like every other game. It's giving you, tips about how to play the game and little things you can do to sway things to your advantage. But I'm not sure exactly at what point, maybe around like the last third of the game, I would say.
Yeah.
The loading screens are, it says things like, you are still a good person.
Right.
I actually have a list of these. I might read off a few of them, but there's one I thought that was funny. It says, if Lugo were still alive, he would likely suffer from PTSD. So really, he's the lucky one.
Yeah. That one kind of hit kind of hard, because that is like it's pretty, like Walker himself is suffering from PTSD. So that's the one I liked. I don't know if you have it in front of you. The one about cognitive dissonance. Yeah. I thought that one was really,
it says,
really funny.
Cognitive dissonance is an uncomfortable feeling caused by holding two conflicting ideas simultaneously. I guess that's sort of the game, like letting you know, like sort of subtly letting you know that there's, that's what's going on here.
Exactly.
That's the voice that Walker is hearing, that the Conrad voice. He's having these conflicting ideas.
Right.
But yeah, that was an interesting one. There's one that just says, "This is all your fault."
Yeah.
Oh, here's one. To kill for yourself is murder. To kill for your government is heroic. To kill for entertainment is harmless. And,
I never saw that one, but that one's really good.
Yeah, and that's kind of what we were talking about, sort of pointing the finger at the player. Because when you play these shooters and you go in and you're just like, you feel like the hero. You play Call of Duty or Battlefield, you feel like the hero.
Right.
You're going in, you're shooting up all the bad guys, you're saving the day. And this game, that's not how it works. And I think the writers did that intentionally. Like, they wanted to make a more realistic war game. Like,
absolutely.
They wanted to sort of, paint a more realistic picture of like what actually happens in war, and that it's not this, it's not glorifying it like a game like Call of Duty does.
Right, and they have there's a few sequences in the game that if you're not getting it, quote unquote, they, not to say they hit you over the head with it, but there's some contextual situations, and the one that sticks to me most is when you finally find Radio Man and you have to clear the roof of his building before you rappel down, and he's saying like, "Oh, why'd you kill that guy?" You know, he had a wife and kids, and I think he had a dog too. Like, and then like he'll say stuff like, "Oh man, I really like that guy," and then the last guy you kill will say, "Well, I don't mind that one. He was kind of a creep." But
yeah.
But the whole thing is that like when you play a Call of Duty or whatever, you're basically just taking out cardboard cutouts of, you know, whatever's in your way. Just shoot whatever moves, you know, so you can get through the game, where this one tries to tell you. I mean, one of the major things of the game is that your enemies in this game are U.S. soldiers. Like how, like right on the face of it, that's crazy that this is a mainstream game where all of your enemies are United States soldiers. It's
funny because one of the loading screen quotes I have listed here is, "How many Americans have you killed today?"
Yeah, wow.
So that's,
Now imagine that, like, you won't see that on a Call of Duty or any other, like, mainstream, you know what I mean? Like, this game is so punk rock, it's not even funny, you know?
You know, it's like when you play, like, a lot of shooters, there's, like, always, it's so, like, black and white, I guess. Like, the bad guys are just, you know, they're like, it's like fighting Nazi Germany or something. You know, it's just, you know, these are people that are like going for like world domination or genocide or something. Whereas, I guess in real life, in a real war conflict, most of the time, it's, you know, I would think both sides sort of have their own valid reasons for, the conflict. And this game, it tries to like humanize, the people that you're killing in the game.
Right.
And there's some little intel files and things you'll find that sort of try to, again, like humanize, the people that you're fighting. And, but, yeah, that was just the point they really tried to drive home, that, you know, it's just, war isn't just like black and white, good versus bad, you know, being the hero kind of thing. And then one of the other quotes, loading screen quotes, and I think Conrad even says it to you, and this probably should have been the tagline for the game, is, "Do you feel like a hero yet?"
Right. Yeah, then that's that is, I think, you know, what the developers are trying to do and what they succeeded in doing is saying that war is not like a carnival shooting gallery, you know, like it's death and destruction, and it's violent, and it is a descent into hell, which is what this game is, you know what I mean? Like,
and there are real victims, you know, they're not just, like you said, cardboard cutouts.
Right. It's heavy stuff, man.
Yeah.
This game is, you know.
You have anything else to add about the fourth wall breaking things?
No, just that the other main point, which if it wasn't obvious by our discussion yet, like most of the things, like Conrad's monologue at the end is designed to be actually that he's talking to you, the person holding the controller. Like he's not talking to Walker, you know what I mean? Like you said, he said, you know, this is all because you wanted to play the hero, you know? And it's like, exactly.
It's like
this
you
is
want
why
to feel like something you're not, a hero.
Exactly.
That's the exact quote.
And I wonder, I mean, this is kind of an aside, and I don't want to derail the conversation, but I wonder how many people actually, like, discovered this game in the way that the developers intended. And what I mean by that is somebody like I kind of had heard a little bit of the buzz about this game before I picked it up. Like, I wonder how many people said, "Oh, it's just Spec Ops: The Line, is it like Call of Duty? I'll give it a shot," you know, and then played it.
And if you read a lot of reviews and a lot of like forum discussions about the game, you'll find that a lot of people really did discover it in that way. They kind of went in just expecting a generic, you know, run-of-the-mill shooter like Call of Duty, and they end up, you know, getting this, and they loved it for that.
Yeah, that's really cool.
And that's actually kind of leads into the next little point I want to talk about is that this game starts off at the beginning. That's why we didn't talk about the beginning chapters very much, is that it really starts off like kind of a generic action game. There's not really a whole lot of these more cerebral things going on. And it throws a lot of people off guard. I think they did that on purpose to, give you a false impression of what this game is, so that when they hit you with like the white phosphorus scene, it hits that much harder.
Yeah,
and
definitely.
And then, but at the same time, I wonder if that was a little bit to the game's detriment, because I think some people might see those scenes and then say like, oh, this is just another, generic shooter. Why should I play this? And it's funny because I had a friend of mine, I was telling him about this, playthrough we were doing, and he was like, that's actually a game I want to play sometime soon. Let me know when you start playing that, and I'll kind of play it, and maybe we'll talk about it a little bit. And when I told him I started it up, he told me he went and checked out some, like a little bit of a YouTube playthrough of the game, starting at the beginning. That's what he told me. He was like, it was like a generic shooter. I don't know if I really want to spend my time with this. And I was like, no, they're doing that on purpose. Just they're going to hit you with some heavy stuff later on. It gets a lot more interesting. But I wonder how many people might have had that impression and just either didn't play the game or stopped playing it at like chapter 5 or something before getting to like the good stuff.
Yeah, the quote-unquote good stuff.
Yeah. Nothing good happens in this game, really. But the interesting stuff, we'll say.
Yeah, no, I know what you meant. It's, it's such an amazing, again, this is, I wish there were more, like, video games like this, because it's funny, like, I come on the air month after month, and we play good game, but I mean, when we talked about like 40K Space Marine, it was just like, well, there's another modern third-person action game, you know what I mean? And
yeah.
There needs to be more stuff like this out there, because, this game is so special, you know what I mean? That it just is, I'm at a loss for words to describe, like the movies and music and other art forms. They have, there's always experimentation and more avant-garde stuff in film and music, you know what I mean? But like, unless you're like talking about the indie scene, there are no, like, there's so rarely mainstream games that are willing to take the risks that this game took. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
I mean, if this game popped up on Steam and got some buzz, and somebody just, threw it together, in Unity and put it out there, it actually might have gotten more attention if it was like that. But the fact that this was, it's a AAA shooter that came out from a major studio that did this crazy thing, to kind of pull the rug out from underneath players. That's just like, it's amazing. It's incredible to think that this game came out, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I agree. I think that might be one of the reasons why this game hits so hard, is because there isn't anything else like this out there.
Yeah.
I mean, if the market was kind of saturated with these sorts of things, then it wouldn't really have an impact. We would, it's like, well, we've seen this game that wants to, trick you into thinking it's something that it's not, and then hitting you with all these heavy scenes. And just the fact that there really isn't anything out there from AAA developers, it just gives this game a lot more impact.
Right.
And it's like you said, on the indie scene, we see this quite a bit. Like, there's a recent release called Everybody's Gone to the Rapture, and I haven't played it. I don't really know what it's about, but it's getting a lot of buzz, and I think it's kind of the same thing. Like, it's just some like an emotional story, maybe. I'm not really sure, but yeah, you see this a lot from the indie scene, but not from AAA developers, because it's risky, and the big publishers don't really like that. They want to make money. They're like, do this. This is what works well, and that's why this game, we didn't even talk about it. It's not really worth talking about, but this game actually has multiplayer that nobody played.
Right.
And I've read from the writers really didn't like that. That it was literally like a checkbox on a form that said, this game, does this game have multiplayer? It needs to have some form of multiplayer. because it's like you just don't put out a shooter these days if it doesn't have multiplayer, and I guess that's kind of the price you pay for like the AAA development and big publishers and things. Like, you can't really take as many chances. Yeah. It's a shame, but it's just how it is.
I agree completely. And I was just reading this thing, a quote from Corey Davis from Jaeger, one of the he's the lead designer. And I want to read this quote, not because it's just kind of why it's a commentary on multiplayer being quote unquote tacked on to shooters, but as I was reading this, I caught a sense of this guy's passion for this game and like what happened with it. So just real quick, he said, talking about the multiplayer, it sheds a negative light on all the meaningful things we did in the single player experience. The multiplayer game's tone is entirely different. The game mechanics were raped to make it happen, and it was a waste of money. No one is playing it, and I don't even feel like it's part of the overall package. It's another game rammed onto the disc like a cancerous growth, threatening to destroy the best things about the experience that the team at Jaeger put their heart and souls into creating. So again, like...
Yeah, I read that somewhere too. I remember that cancerous growth comment. But yeah, they're absolutely right. I mean, this is a game that did not need multiplayer. It shouldn't have been there. It was tacked on because 2K wanted it on there, and to hopefully attract sales.
And they did the same thing to BioShock 2, and people said the same exact thing about the multiplayer in that game. That, why would you put multiplayer on a BioShock game? But they just felt that was necessary because that's what you do with a shooter. So they did it again here, and that's what we got. So yeah, I
guess we'll go into talk a little bit about like Walker's degradation, his mental breakdown. We talked about how like the white phosphorus scene was his breaking point. And after that point, his like his vocal commands start getting more like maniacal. He goes from sounding like this stern commander guy to, just like a crazy person by the end of the game.
Yeah, it's actually a lot like kind of the inverse of what happened to Lara Croft in the Tomb Raider reboot.
Yeah, I get a little bit. Yeah, I mean...
It's not. It's a different kind of thing, but as far as the presentation and the contextualized character model degrading,
sort of like an evolution or like a devolution in this case.
Exactly.
Yeah, and also his like executions get more violent, like the execution animations.
Yep.
Like I think at the beginning of the game, he'll just sort of like kneel down and punch a guy in the face to like knock him out. And by the end of the game, he's like sticking the barrel of his gun in his mouth and just shooting, or like snapping their necks and things like that. I mean, they get much more violent. And I read somewhere, I was like maybe on the game's website, but it talks about like the moral choices in the game and how like it gives you these big, impossible to make decisions that impact all these people. But I felt like like we said, a lot of the choices in the game didn't really impact the story. And like all the choices were bad. There were like no good choices you can make, so all the choices this might have been necessary, I guess, to like kind of give more believability to that all these things that Walker has to do is leading to the degradation of his mental state. But it was a little disappointing, I guess, that the choices didn't seem to impact things very much. I don't know if you felt that way, but
yeah. So the choices are. It's good that they're not binary in the way that it would be in, say, like Mass Effect, the Paragon Renegade thing that we talked about when we played it.
Oh yeah.
But I wish, as you said earlier, that they had kind of gone a little bit further with the repercussions of what you could do. And I really like the idea of the hidden choices. I like the idea of trying to do a little sequence breaking and doing a little of let's see what happens, if I try to run away, if I try to shoot the snipers on the bridge instead of shooting one of the guys hanging there. Like, I like that. And the game, like, kind of, it takes the ball a couple of yards down the field, but it doesn't take it to the end zone. You know what I mean? Like, there's some steps in really cool directions here, but overall, yeah, I would say that the payoff was not good enough. But, you know, really the choices were handled better than just, you know, press X for the good choice and press Y for the bad choice. You know what I mean?
Yeah, there was no like black and white, you know, this is the good thing, this is the bad thing, you know. Like I said, there were no good choices most of the time. It was all just bad.
Right, and I guess that plays into the whole thing of, you know, player choice and Walker saying, hey, we didn't have a choice. I don't have a choice. You always had a choice. You know what I mean? Like, the whole thing is about player agency. And I kind of wondered, I read somewhere, and I think it was just a YouTube comment, so I can't really attribute it to anybody, but somebody said at the beginning of the game, it would have been really cool if there was like a secret ending where it says, you know, your mission is to locate the survivors and leave the city. And it would have been really cool if you could have actually like done that. You know what I mean? Like, and just like game over, you know what I mean? But then you wouldn't have had like the rest of the meat of the game to experience. But you know, it's one of those things, like, the only way to, the lesson here is the only right choice is to not buy the game and put the disc in your system and play it. You know what I mean? So, yeah, it's really like, you know, to use a buzzword, it's really meta. You know what I mean? Like, by me actually playing the game, I made the choice to play it and to experience, because I wanted to do, you know, shooty shoot and kill people. You know what I mean? Joke's on me. But the whole thing is like, I wish, again, to circle back around to, I wish the actual choices that you had even more consequence and repercussions and, you know, making things happen. So that's my 2 cents on that.
Yeah. And you reminded me a little earlier when you brought up the hanging person choice. I said we were going to touch back on that, but yeah, you can choose to either shoot the soldier guy or the guy who was stealing the water. But at the end of the game, it kind of shows you these revelations, and those two people were dead the whole time. Like, Walker was imagining that, and that's why like Adams and Lugo acted so strange during that part of the game, because Walker's just standing there in front of these two corpses, like, we have to choose one of these two, and that's, you know, Adams and Lugo are like, what are you talking about? Let's just keep moving.
Right.
And there's also, you brought up the beginning of the game where in Chapter 1 is full of those white transitions we talked about before, where things are not as they appear. And yeah, every single scene is a fade to white in Chapter 1. Which is interesting, because you talked about their mission was to just kind of go in, do a little recon, and then get out of there and contact the evac team or whatever, you know, contact the there's actually a scene when you're talking to the Conrad at the end, or, you know, quote unquote Conrad, where he says, you were never meant to come here, and it shows a scene of like Walker, Adams, and Lugo walking into Dubai saying, okay, our mission is just, you know, come in here, look for survivors, head back to the storm wall, and call in the cavalry. And I think all the transitions in Chapter 1 were sort of Walker misremembering or distorting his memories of what actually happened to sort of give him a reason to keep going, to keep looking for Conrad, because Walker is basically obsessed with Conrad. He idolizes him, and you know, and because he considers Conrad a hero. Conrad saved his life in the when they were in Kabul. Like, they don't really say what happened in Kabul, but they make that pretty clear that Conrad did save Walker's life. I think that might play into sort of that whole hero thing. You know, maybe Walker kept pushing on because he wanted to be a hero like Conrad. But yeah, you find out that some of these earlier events and the whole flashback part of the game are distorted. And they're not actually as they appear. But yeah, I just thought that was worth mentioning before we got too far away from that. But I guess we can just kind of start wrap up our final thoughts on the story itself. I mean, unless you have anything else you want to talk about in detail, but
no, I think honestly, I think we covered everything that I wanted to. Yeah, no, go ahead.
So there's I guess two major theories for how the story plays out, and I think one that I personally like the most is that, like we said, everything that happens prior to that chopper crash is a flashback, and everything that happens during the flashback sequence is kind of distorted. Walker's kind of altering those events in his mind to sort of place blame for his actions. That's why that is pretty much the result of all those white transitions. That's what the white transitions are telling you. The other big theory is that Walker actually dies in the chopper crash at the very beginning of the game during the prologue. And everything after that is sort of happening in sort of either in Walker's mind or his own like little personal hell landscape. A lot of people like that theory.
Yeah, I didn't know about this until recently, and to be honest, I didn't even notice it in your notes. I saw it somewhere else, and I'm glad that you also, saw it in your research, obviously. And this is, very interesting to me. I hadn't thought about this until, playing it this time, and I think it is a really cool theory. I don't know if I'm like 100% bought into it, but it does explain a lot of things, It explains that line that you said about earlier, with Walker saying, hey, this isn't right, we already did this, you know what I mean? Like, that supports that a lot. So.
And that's what I was saying before about how the writers, I feel like they give you like enough like supporting evidence to support either of these main theories. There's also enough contradictions to sort of refute them. So they leave it very ambiguous and open to interpretation. Personally, I definitely like the theory of everything being a flashback and Walker sort of distorting his memories and placing the blame on Conrad and everybody else. And that's my personal pick. It's open to interpretation. It's I don't know if you said you kind of like the death theory, I guess. I
mean, I don't know. I'm not, I'm not putting like a stamp on it. Like, that's the one I like. Okay. But it's very interesting, having just come across it more recently. It's like, oh, I never thought of that. And, like.
The main reason I kind of don't like that theory is because it sort of renders everything that we talked about with the white and black transitions as kind of irrelevant, because then everything is essentially imagined or not reality.
That's true. Yeah, that's a really good point.
But at the same time, it's hard to explain like why Walker remembers the chopper sequence. Like I said, they kind of give you enough evidence to go either way.
I actually wondered too, was the line about we already did this already just another weird fourth wall break? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I thought it might have been just Nolan North was just in the little voice acting booth, and he's like, "Wait a minute, we already did this. Why am I doing voice acting for you?" No,
that would be funny. And they said, "Brilliant, leave it in."
Yeah, just keep it in. But yeah, I don't know. It could very well be that they're just trying to screw with the player some more. But yeah, it's I think even like the lead writer on the game said he didn't say it was like canon, but he said he liked the whole Walker dying at the beginning of the game and everything else being kind of in his mind or whatever. But yeah, it's like I said, it's open to interpretation. It's ambiguous, and I think it's cool that they did that. That they kind of, there is no 100%. This is the canon ending, or this is the canon story. It's kind of what you make of it. So, yeah, I guess that about wraps it up. If you have any closing thoughts.
Yeah, play it. And anybody if you listen to this, I hope you already played it.
The irony is that if somebody listened to this and it's now interesting. We probably ruined all the plot twists and everything. But.
Well, just to say, it's a game that should be played, and if you have played it and you're listening to this, tell your friends to play it. You know what I mean? Don't tell them what's going to happen. Just like Steven did, tell your friends that hey, it's like a shooter, but it's more than that. Give it a shot. You know?
Yeah, it's kind of hard to recommend this game to somebody because it's like. It's a shooter. You should play it. And he's like, oh, well, is the gameplay really good? And you're like, well, not really. You're like, well, what's so good about it? Well, I can't tell you. You just have to play it and see. But it's definitely a good game. I've played through it. I played through it twice, and I enjoyed both playthroughs. And there's a lot of games. It's a struggle to get through just once. So it's to be able to play a game twice, practically back to back is. I think that says a lot about the quality of a game and the amount of time and research I put into this, just trying to sort it all out. I don't think I've ever analyzed anything as much as I have analyzed the story of this game. I mean, if only I'd put more effort into my schoolwork. If it put this much effort into my schoolwork, then maybe I would have got better grades. But that the schoolwork wasn't as interesting as this game. So it's a great game. It's you can find it dirt cheap. Should pick it up.
Definitely. And I actually, you bring up a good point about playing it multiple times, and it is one of those games that you get more out of on repeat playthroughs. And I think I told you off the air that I played it on easy and I got through the game in like 5 hours. And I did some. Yeah, I definitely did some sequence breaking and like checkpointing and just avoiding, certain things, but to make the game go faster. But I got a lot more out of it. It's like a movie that has a twist ending that then you go back and watch it again to see if you can pick up on the hints. You know what I mean? So playing it, if you've played it before, maybe try playing it again, and you'll notice more things going on.
And I thought about setting up the playthrough that way for like the first 2 weeks to play it once, and then the second 2 weeks play it again. But we had enough. We didn't get anybody to play it one time, so I wasn't gonna push it. But it's a good point. It's definitely like watching those kind of twist ending movies, and then everything's a little more clear that second time. I guess that about wraps it up. You want to talk about the game you're hosting for September?
Sure. Actually, I am going to host Metal Gear Solid on the retro side for September. So you'll find me over there. What we're doing is Rich and I are kind of trading places. So for the modern game in September, Rich is going to host Indigo Prophecy, also known as Fahrenheit in Europe, which is... one of the I don't know if it's David Cage's first game, but it was one of his early breakout titles. So if you played Heavy Rain or what's his other one, Beyond Two Souls, you will probably also enjoy Indigo Prophecy. It's a cool little game. So Rich is going to have that on the modern side in September. So come up, check us out on rfgeneration.com and join us. And that'll be all for another episode of the PlayCast. Thank you for listening, and a very special thank you to everyone who joined the playthroughs and to our returning guest, Russ Lyman. Remember to visit us at rfgeneration.com to participate in our playthroughs, discuss the games we're playing, or leave feedback about this podcast. Join us next month in our playthroughs for September when Rich and I will actually trade places, and I will have the pleasure of hosting one of my favorite games of all time, Metal Gear Solid, for the Sony PlayStation, and Rich will be hosting Indigo Prophecy, also known as Fahrenheit, for the PS2, original Xbox, and PC. Thank you as always for listening, and we'll see you next time on the RF Generation PlayCast.